Chapter 807. Unknowingly, the seawater had already spread into the hall, and everything was covered in water. However, Chinyu did not panic at all. He calmed himself down, and within a few breaths, he had already found the other party's weakness. He waved his hand and took out a spiritual array disc to set up a spiritual array. The purpose was not to trap the enemy, but to break through the seawater that filled the sky. Luo Shan only felt that the seawater was getting colder and colder. Suddenly, he was lifted up and thrown into the air. He struggled and panicked, but he did not fall into the water as expected. Instead, he landed on a thick ice surface. Shui Yu's prepared attack did not succeed, and the area that was favorable to her was completely destroyed. Now that there was ice everywhere, no matter how powerful she was, she would be limited. Wrath of the Sea God. Shui Yu's mouth continued to spit out cryptic characters one after another. Suddenly, the ice surface began to change, and cracks began to appear inch by inch. As the prize for using this move, Shui Yu groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul, who were in the center of the storm, were completely submerged in the water. Before the smile on his face disappeared, a big hole suddenly appeared on the water surface. Countless water droplets turned into icicles in the air and scattered in all directions. Whether it was Shui Yu or Di Xiaoyu, they were not affected much by this. They just had to dodge in a sorry state. However, those who were slightly weaker were pierced into sieves. As a big force, the Sea God Palace not only had powerful experts, but also some middle-level and low-level experts. Using the water that filled the sky, Qin Yu forcefully broke through and took advantage of the situation to reap hundreds of lives. There were thousands of people around. Other than the hundreds who were killed on the spot, many others were seriously injured and were struggling to find medicine. Isn't the Sea God Palace in cahoots with the Fire God Palace? I'll let you have a taste of a sea of fire. Fire and water are incompatible. Fire God's palm. This was what he had learned from Shui Yu. Although he did not think much of it, the move that was only recorded in the Great Emperor's inheritance was not that simple. If he reached the peak of perfection, he could create a sea of fire with a wave of his hand. Qin Yu hadn't grasped this technique for long, so he naturally couldn't summon a vast sea of flames with a casual wave of his hand. However, now that he had used 80% of his strength, he could burn the entire Sea God Palace. After the sea of fire fell, some of it was extinguished by the water in the sky. However, the endless flames were constantly replenishing the seawater, and soon, the seawater was boiling. Waves of smoke continued to rise, and the people who were soaked in the seawater screamed one after another. Then there was silence. One could only imagine how powerful the boiling seawater would be, and how much damage the people who were soaked in it would suffer. Di Xiaoyu's face was already quite ugly. Is this the so-called strength of the Sea God's Palace? A quintessential Saint Stage powerhouse can easily annihilate all of you. Shui Yu had suffered too much damage. In order to reverse the situation, she had forced herself to be injured. But now, Qin Yu had easily reversed the situation, and the gap between the two sides had even widened. Not to mention that Di Xiaoyu was annoyed. She couldn't bear it anymore. If all the fault was on her, how could she compete for the position of Palace Master? Bow of the Moon, Arrow of Water. A pure white longbow appeared in Shui Yu's hand. She had put 90% of her strength into the bow, an arrow, and condensed an arrow that seemed to be made of water out of thin air. However, this arrow made of water contained a huge amount of energy. A half-step celestial palace had condensed 90% of her strength. So how could it be underestimated? The arrow was shot. It was aimed at Qin Yu's glabella. Qin Yu didn't dodge or evade. Mighty body of the dragon god. Chart of celestial extermination. It directly collided with the arrow that had condensed 90% of the strength of a half-step celestial palace. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The entire Sea God's Palace collapsed. With the dragon soul by his side, Qin Yu didn't even have a trace of dust on him. He was still clean and refreshed. However, Shui Yu had consumed too much of her strength and couldn't even avoid these debris. She tried her best to protect her body from injuries, but she was still in a sorry state. Shuewa knew that she couldn't continue to fight head-on. Qin Yu's strength was too high, and it wasn't enough for her to only be a half-step celestial palace. She had to invite someone with higher strength. Suddenly, she threw out a small ball that was emitting golden light. "Ancestor, save me." After successfully sending the message, Shuewa wanted to escape directly. However, she tripped over someone's corpse, and her speed slowed down slightly. You want to run after calling for help? How can there be such a good thing in this world? Qin Yu and the dragon soul joined forces and blocked Shuewa's path at the same time, and killed her on the spot. The ancestor, who had been worried, suddenly opened his eyes. When he opened the door of the secret room, he saw the mess outside. Who did this? The voice was distant and long, and it spread far and wide. Hearing the angry roar, Luo Shan couldn't help but dig his ears. Whose voice is that? No one, just the ancestor of the Sea God Palace. The dragon soul's words were easy, but when Luo Shan heard this, he slipped and almost fell to the ground, like a dog eating mud. To be called an ancestor, he had to be at least in the celestial palace realm. Luo Shan was just a small calamity realm. Who would have thought that he would see so many almighties in one day? Moreover, these almighties were more or less his enemies. To be able to see his enemies fall to the ground one by one was such a delightful and joyful thing. However, Luo Shan only had fear in his heart, and his mind was filled with the aura he felt in the Fire God Palace. Even if he felt it from afar, he was forced to the point of sweetness in his throat. If he personally went to the battlefield, wouldn't he lose his life? Just like how Qin Yu dealt with those weak people before, he didn't need to use much strength at all. Just an aura was enough to kill Luo Shan without a doubt. Benefactor, why don't we go look for clues about the dragon vein first? Luo Shan didn't have the guts to continue staying. Now that he had taken revenge, he naturally had a greater goal. All the grudges on him had disappeared, and he could live a carefree life. However, the premise was that he could survive. Qin Yu frowned slightly. Now is a good opportunity. Although the ancestor of the Sea God Palace should be very strong, it's not impossible to fight against him. Since he had made this trip, he didn't want to return empty-handed. Inexplicably, Luo Shan understood what Qin Yu meant. He suddenly thought of a place and brought him there. When the ancestor of the Sea God Palace arrived, he saw a ruin. He immediately let out a furious roar. "Don't let me find out who you are, or my Sea God Palace will not rest until you die." Chapter 808. When they reached the place, Luo Shan couldn't help but pant, but his face was filled with excitement. The Sea God Palace is in front. It's where they usually store things. I've seen them put some precious things in there with my own eyes. A dark golden light flashed, and the heavy door exploded. This was indeed the Sea God Palace, a place used to store some good things. If someone didn't lead the way, it would be difficult to find it. Qin Yu put all these things into his bag, but he didn't use them all. He looked down on them. This should only be one of the treasures of the Sea God Palace. Let's go look for clues about the dragon vein first. It's not too late to come back later. Luo Shan immediately led the way. After crossing a mountain range and passing through the bottom of the sea, they encountered a turbulent current. Most of the sea was water, and the location of the dragon vein was in the deepest abyss of the sea. At that time, he was being chased and fell into the water, accidentally falling into the underwater cave. After that, he obtained such a great opportunity, but perhaps this opportunity shouldn't have belonged to him in the first place. He could only use a very small part of it. He couldn't see anything outside, only the deep darkness at the entrance of the cave. It was as if it wanted to suck people's souls in and suck them to an unknown place. If he took 2 steps in, he would feel that it was slightly extraordinary. There seemed to be a mysterious force in the depths of the cave. It was extremely gentle, but it unquestionably excluded people. Luo Shan was at a loss. He had never encountered such a situation before. He had never encountered such a situation before after falling into the water. When he woke up, he found himself in the cave. It's probably just an accident. Luo Shan tried to walk further in, trying to withstand the pressure. Fine cold sweat appeared on his forehead, and he quickly merged into the sea. Ah! Luo Shan suddenly flew backward. Although the repulsive force was slightly gentle and didn't have much lethality, it was very impressive. If he wanted to force his way in, he would be bounced back 10 times or 100 times. After hitting a reef, Luo Shan stood up with a grimace. Qin Yu waved his hand. You don't have to try. Maybe you accidentally bumped into some mechanism. Or maybe you met some conditions. Think carefully about what was different about you after you woke up. Luo Shan fell into deep thought, thinking inch by inch. Indeed, nothing special happened at that time. His clothes were still intact. It was the same for the wounds on his body. They were constantly bleeding. Right, fresh blood. At that time, there was very little blood. I thought it was soaked. Also, at that time, I was already on the verge of death. I thought I was dead, but later I found out that I was still alive. At that time, it was the most crucial moment for him to escape from death. He was the only survivor of the entire family, so he naturally had a deep impression of him. Even if it had been a long time, he could still remember every detail clearly. Injured and on the verge of death. Or does it need blood as a medium to open it? Qin Yu was not prepared to try any of them, whether it was blood or serious injuries. Since you're not willing to let me in, I'll destroy this place. A powerful aura erupted, and a power that was enough to destroy mountains stirred the seawater to boil. In an instant, the heavens and earth changed color. Huge waves that were at least 100 meters high rose from the sea. The houses on the shore collapsed one after another. In the deepest part of the sea, rocks flew everywhere. The originally deep cave entrance was like a giant beast from the abyss opening its mouth wide. It was as if it was going to swallow everything in front of it. Qin Yu's combat strength was tyrannical. Under the power of this attack, it was rebounded by this mysterious power 10 times or 100 times. The entire sea was trembling because of it. Although it was not at the Emperor realm, it was enough to make the Heaven Palace tremble. Luo Shan had been blown aside by this turbulence. If it were not for the dragon's soul pulling him, he would have been affected and killed. To be able to see and even participate in such a big chaos with his own eyes, the shock in Luo Shan's heart could not be described with words. Oh my God, what the hell is going on? Could it be that another powerhouse at the late stage of the Heaven Palace realm has appeared? The source of this power seems to be deep in the sea. Let's go and see. When all the forces gathered together, they saw countless familiar faces. Almost all the major forces in the sea had rushed over because of this huge force. They did not have time to exchange greetings. They just nodded and plunged into the water. They went to the source of all the tremors. Such a powerful force, that inexplicable force could not bear it all. At the same time, monstrous waves were set off, attracting the attention of all the people in the sea. Then it collapsed and dissipated. A bright golden light was slightly emitted under the stone. It was extremely conspicuous in the deep sea. It casually lifted a huge stone that was as tall as a person. It revealed the huge dragon vein below. Suddenly, a bright golden light soared into the sky. It illuminated the entire sea. It was a 100-meter wave that had already risen. It also gradually subsided because of the illumination of this light. The sea was calm. Even in the sea, the light was bright. The dark clouds that had gathered in the sky gradually dispersed, revealing the clear sky. What is this? This aura, it's the dragon vein. It really is the legendary dragon vein. It turns out that the legendary dragon vein really exists. People from all the major forces were excited. The sea god Palace's great ancestor was also attracted by this powerful aura. When it landed, people from all the major forces shut their mouths. They quietly made way for it. After all, it was a heavenly palace realm cultivator. As long as the great emperor did not appear, he would be invincible in the heavenly palace realm. Di Xiaoyu was also brought along by the great ancestor. After sensing the dragon vein's aura, he strongly requested to come along. Because of his fear of great Emperor Rongtian, the great ancestor brought him along in the end. It can't be wrong. That person mentioned the dragon vein before. He must have something to do with this matter. See God Palace's great ancestor. Don't tell me you want to take such an important dragon vein for yourself. Although his expression was quite unpleasant, the great ancestor did not get angry at this person. If possible, who would not want to have the dragon vein in their own hands? The legendary dragon vein was extremely magical. It might allow him to break through the heavenly palace realm in one go. Thinking of this, his heart was burning with excitement. Chinyu did not notice that everyone had gathered. Even if he knew, he would not take it to heart. No one could say for sure how long and how big a dragon vein was. This was something that only existed in legends. A real dragon vein, even if only revealed a trace of its aura, was enough to shock people. Chapter 809. Quietly emitting a faint golden light, the entire dragon vein gradually revealed its elegance to everyone. The dragon soul just got close to this light and felt comfortable all over its mind clear. Everyone said that the dragon vein contains rich dragon clan inheritance and even treasures. Now it seems that this is not entirely true. The dragon vein itself is a permanent resource. The entire dragon vein was extremely huge and long, spreading over thousands of miles. It was difficult to store it with just one person's strength. Chin, you made an extremely risky move, which was to sneak into the dragon vein. A faint golden light flashed before his eyes, and he suddenly entered another world. As he expected, there was another world in the dragon vein. However, it was extremely simple and monotonous. Other than the rich dragon chi, there were only some jade pillars that rose from the sky. The dragon soul was like a fish in water when it saw this place. It quickly circled around the jade pillars. When it returned, it reported the truth. There seems to be something in every pillar. When I put my hand on it just now, there was a voice telling me that I could choose an item to take away. It's the same for every pillar. It seems like there's another space inside that's used to store treasures. And it seemed like there wasn't only one or two treasures inside. There were many of them. Now, they could already see hundreds of pillars, not to mention that there must be other things deeper in. The entire dragon vein didn't only have these jade pillars and the treasures in them. No matter what, this trip was worth it. Other than the dragon vein itself, there was an extremely rich collection inside, which was amazing. It's just that it seems like we can only take out one item from one jade pillar at a time. Chinyu curled his lips. So what? We can't be too greedy. You and I will take out one item from each jade pillar. It's all up to luck. Even Luo Shan was given such a good opportunity to pick a few items. To be able to hide in the dragon vein, it was naturally a rare treasure in the world. Just taking out one or two of them was enough to make people fight for it. It was unknown if the collection in the dragon vein could be compared to what the Fire God Palace had accumulated over tens of thousands of years. Chinyu walked past them one by one. Soon, a large pile of items appeared in his hands. With a flash of light, a fresh fragrance spread throughout the spacious field. Just a whiff of it was enough to raise one's spirits. This seems to have a trace of immortal energy. However, this trace of fragrance was truly a little weak. If one had never come into contact with immortal chi, they would only think that this was a treasure and would not be able to recognize its origin. Only those who had truly come into contact with higher levels would be able to detect the difference in this white peach. It's a bit faint. It should be a divine seed from some unknown place that fell into the Ten Directions world. If it was just a seed, there was no suitable land. It was already extremely difficult for it to grow. But more or less, it still carried some characteristics of the God realm. If an ordinary person were to eat this peach, they should be able to improve their strength and fundamentally change their physique. It wasn't of much use to him. This peach has the aura of the God world, Yang Qi said. It has the effect of changing one's constitution. Take it. His aptitude was the best. Although this peach was somewhat rare, it was of little use to him. Luo Shan carefully took the peach that looked like a crystal. He couldn't believe it at all. Is this really for me? Such a precious and rare thing. No matter how many dangers he had experienced since he was young, he had never tasted such a good thing. Even just touching it made him feel incredulous. Such a precious thing was actually in his hands. It was simply unbelievable. Qin Yu didn't think much of it. After all, it was Luo Shan who told him the location of the dragon vein. It was just a peach that was of no use to him and carried some aura of the god realm. After a long time after taking it out, the aura will slowly dissipate and its effect will become weaker. You'd better eat it on the spot. There were indeed many precious things in these jade pillars. For some things, even to Qin Yu and the dragon soul, they were still extremely helpful. There were also supreme treasures that could directly increase one's strength. Originally, he was going to eat it and refine it here. He would definitely be able to break through to the god realm. However, there was a sudden commotion. There seemed to be other people outside preparing to enter. Not long after, several figures flashed. They slowly solidified from transparent. There was actually a familiar face among them. What a coincidence! Di Xiaoyu also saw them and immediately widened his eyes. That's right, it's them. At this time, the Ocean God Palace's great ancestor also noticed. They looked up and down and were suddenly alarmed. The entire Ocean God Palace had been destroyed. It was already too late when he came out of seclusion. Now that he finally found the culprit, how could he not be surprised and angry? The rest of the major forces that followed and focused their attention on Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul. Luo Shan was completely ignored. After all, the pseudo-dragon vein in his body had been taken out, and he wasn't even in the Calamity Realm. He was completely an ordinary person. Who would care about an ordinary person? It's the two of you who provoked the Ocean God Palace. The Dragon's Soul glanced at him with contempt. Do you have to dress up? You know in your heart whether you provoked me or crushed me. The entire Ocean God Palace is now in ruins. You're the only great ancestor left here. What's the use? What? The Ocean God Palace has been reduced to ruins. This matter, when did it happen? Unlike the situation in the Fire Territory, the Ocean God Palace wasn't the only force in the entire sea. There were many forces under their banner. If they really joined forces, they wouldn't be completely afraid of the Ocean God Palace. However, their relationship was always very close. Just like the things in Luo Shan's family, no one would care at all, let alone care. Now that they heard that the Ocean God Palace had been destroyed, most people were thinking about how to get some benefits from it. Feeling the sighs and questioning gazes, the Ocean God Palace's great ancestor was even more furious. I can't believe I met you here. It's really fate. With the Ocean God Palace's great ancestor as the center, an imposing aura surged into the sky. The invisible strength forced everyone around him to quickly find a corner to hide. Many people were affected. Di Xiaoyu, who was in the heavenly ethereal realm, was also forced into a corner. Only then could he barely stand. Boundless Expanse Technique. Extremely powerful strength caused layers of cracks to appear on the nearest jade pillar, and they continued to spread. Chapter 8:10. A faint blue light flashed past, bringing about a huge vortex. Emperor Xiaoyu was also a little shocked. For the first time, he realized that this old man, whom he had never taken a fancy to, actually had such a powerful ability. Some people in the crowd also exclaimed, "It's actually the legendary Vast Expanse Technique. Wasn't this martial skill lost 10,000 years ago? I heard that the Howhan flag and the Vast Expanse record were also combined at that time. It can play a supreme role. I didn't expect the martial technique to be obtained by the sea god ancestor. No one has ever noticed it. This was indeed the trump card of the sea god ancestor. Although he didn't think that a quintessential sage could pose any threat, he recognized Qin Yu. This was the person who had suppressed the two heavenly palaces by himself in the fire domain. He might have some backup plans, so he was prepared to strike first and take the initiative first. If he killed him immediately, there would be no future trouble. But he was quite mistaken in his idea. If it was someone else, he might be able to seize the initiative by striking first. Qin Yu wouldn't sit still and wait for death. The sea god ancestor's powerful attack was destined to fail. If he just escaped, the entire dragon vein might be destroyed by this powerful attack. The dragon vein was already in his bag. Whether it was the things in the jade pillar or the dragon vein itself, no one was allowed to touch them. The moment that powerful aura came out, everyone present couldn't remain calm. They all looked at an image in the shadow. They were dumbfounded. The sea god ancestor could only resist with all his might. However, no matter how much strength he used, there was no way to resist that powerful will. He could only die with hatred. Before he died, his eyes were wide open as if they were about to fall out of their sockets in the next moment. Coincidentally, this pair of eyes happened to be facing Emperor Xiaoyu. Qin Yu clicked his tongue. It's a pity that I wasted the immortal qi on you guys. If it weren't for the sake of protecting the dragon vein, there was no need to use his strongest method to suppress it from the beginning. He could use this sea god ancestor to practice and reconsolidate his strength. It was a pity that he shouldn't have touched him as soon as he came up. If he accidentally damaged the dragon vein in the slightest, even if he were to die 100 or 1,000 times, it wouldn't be too much. However, while he felt that it was a waste, the others were dumbfounded. Hall Master Zhang, am I seeing things? Heavens above, this is too terrifying. While they were still in shock, the dragon's soul suddenly attacked. His strength was still slightly inferior to Qin Yu's. However, it was still barely enough to suppress these people. Do you want me to send you out? Or do you want to scram? The group of people were terrified. They looked at each other. However, everyone's attitude was different. Some people were scared out of their wits, while others were skeptical. Under different moods, they all made different choices. We'll leave on our own. What are you afraid of? I don't believe that he can use this method without limit. All right, stop causing trouble. Even if it's a 1 in 10,000 chance, we can't afford to take it. Everyone calm down. It's just two heavenly saints. Suddenly, all the thorns fell to the ground. There was a long, thin rod in their necks that pierced through their entire throats. This was something that he casually took out from the jade pillar just now. It seemed to be some kind of hidden weapon made of special materials. Although he wasn't very good at using hidden weapons, it was very easy for him to throw it around. Most importantly, there was almost no sound when he used it. This made him very satisfied. It was a pity that there weren't many of them. Otherwise, he could have stored a large batch. He killed a group of thorns so cleanly. This time, no one dared to say anything else, even if they were very interested in everything in the dragon vein. However, no one dared to say anything else. Otherwise, the fate of the few corpses on the ground would be their final ending. Isn't this settled cleanly? Without seeing blood, they'll never understand who's the stronger party. It was a pity that during the fight, a few of the jade pillars were damaged. Qin Yu felt that it was a pity. He immediately used a wisp of divine fire that he had with him after receiving the inheritance. He directly burned the corpse of the sea god ancestor until there was nothing left. The power in his body was all turned into nutrients and absorbed by the divine fire. The other corpses were dealt with in the same way. There was a high platform in the depths. 3 treasures were placed on it. Brilliant silver light flickered bit by bit. The material was even more profound and simple. Placed in the center was a soft armor. The scales on it seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life. They were deep and heavy. It's a dragon scale, and it's a soft armor made from the dragon's forbidden scale. Everyone knew that as long as one had the dragon's bloodline, there would be a scale on their body that no one could touch. However, very few people knew that it was the dragon's weakness. It was also the dragon's toughest scale. Its toughness was far beyond that of any other scale. Its defense was at least 3 times stronger than that of an ordinary scale. Of course, every scale on a dragon's body was at least the size of a palm. The scales on this soft armor had been specially processed. Although they looked very small, in reality, it was only because they were mixed with a part of the spatial principle. And there were more than 1,000 scales embedded on this soft armor. There were more than 10,000 of them. Sensing the aura on this soft armor, all the dragons, including the anciently fire dragon, could not help but shed a tear. This is the destruction of the dragon clan. Although I don't know how many tens of thousands of years ago it was, something extremely important must have happened back then. Everyone knows that the dragon bloodline in written records is an extremely important treasure whether it's to the Dragon Clan or other clans. However, very few people know what's behind a dragon bloodline. Those are the corpses of tens of thousands of Dragon Clan experts. Without the full strength of tens of thousands of experts, it's impossible to brew such a miraculous treasure. Chinyu was silent for a while. He stood in front of this soft armor for a full 15 minutes. Although he did not know what happened back then, he still had to respect his seniors. Tens of thousands of experts were enough for him to stand there in silence for a moment and mourn. After 15 minutes, Chinyu was about to step forward and take off the soft armor. Suddenly, a golden light descended on him. Chinyu's aura suddenly soared. The dragon's soul also felt the tremors and the surging power in its body. Heavenly God Realm. After breaking through the threshold of a major realm, it still did not stop. Chapter 8:11. His strength continued to rise steadily. Early stage, Heavenly God. Middle stage, Heavenly God. Late stage, Heavenly God. When he was almost at the perfected Heavenly God realm, the speed at which Chinyu's aura rose gradually slowed down. The dragon soul also received a huge boost because of this, and the aura on its body also rose steadily until it reached the same level as Chinyu before it stopped. Although it was still a little bit away from the perfected Heavenly God realm. But the two of them already had a clear understanding of the future martial Dao realm. The future path was open. Just suddenly received such a huge boost. His realm was not unstable at all, and his foundation was very solid. As long as he was patient and polished, it would not be long before he could break through again. Not only did Chinyu's strength increase, but he also received some scattered memories. Among them were records of the Dragon Clan from tens of thousands of years ago. At that time, there were tens of thousands of dragons. How glorious was that? The sea region back then was not called the sea region yet. It was called the Azure Dragon Territory. The ancient Azure Dragon encountered a sudden change, and all of them died. That was already a very ancient dragon clan. They had been wiped out a long time ago due to some special reasons. Now that he received some scattered memories, Chinyu already knew why this powerful and ancient clan would suddenly be wiped out. Because of space. When a powerhouse was fighting, the Azure Dragon Territory suddenly broke open. At that time, there were cracks everywhere. Even with the accumulation of countless powerhouses' corpses, there was no way to fill it up. Only someone in the divine realm could solve this kind of change. After tens of thousands of years of fighting, the corpses of the Azure Dragon powerhouses had accumulated to tens of thousands. One should know that only super powerhouses whose strength reached at least the late-stage Heavenly Palace realm could be included in the calculation. And the Azure Dragon Clan's king at that time was already a great emperor. In these tens of thousands of years of fighting, because of space turbulence, there was no newborn. It was only until the last moment that a pair of eggs were laid. In order to preserve this only Azure Dragon bloodline, the Azure Dragon Clan at that time exhausted the last bit of strength in their body. It formed the embryonic form of a dragon bloodline, waiting for the fated person to pass the test. One of the tests was the yearning for benefits. After Chinyu saw the soft armor, he did not take it immediately. Even though he knew the value of it, he still chose to mourn for the mountain of corpses and sea of blood behind the soft armor. After a moment, the test was also completed. In the end, he obtained the scattered memories of tens of thousands of blue dragons. He also obtained the remaining power that had not completely dissipated and was used to protect the dragon vein. After tens of thousands of years, the original paradise of the blue dragon tribe had turned into a sea. Time was indeed the most powerful force in the world. As for the pseudo-dragon vein, it was just a small and insignificant companion product. Previously, Luo Shan had been unable to completely fuse with the camouflage dragon vein, much less use it. The root of the problem was that the pseudo-dragon vein itself had a huge flaw. It was only made up of powerful dragon chi. In essence, it was not stubborn. It was a mass of dragon chi and did not have the essence of a bloodline. Therefore, even though Luo Shan was able to raise his strength to the calamity level, he could not go any further. The pseudo-dragon vein only had the most basic absorption, conversion, and storage function, and there was a certain upper limit. Luo Shan was not of the dragon race, and was unable to completely absorb the dragon chi. Naturally, he would suffer immense pain. I see. Luo Shan finally understood what was going on. As it turned out, he was just hiding a ball of chi in his body. Of course, it could not achieve the result of his cultivation. Coincidentally, there is indeed a small dragon vein over there. You can use this small dragon vein as your martial vein. With a complete and huge dragon vein, there were countless resources in it. The small dragon vein, next to the soft armor, was not worth mentioning at all. What? Luo Shan was so shocked that he fell down on the spot. He should be glad that there was no mud here. Otherwise, he would be in a sorry state. The dragon soul could not be bothered to talk nonsense with him. It grabbed his collar with one hand and took the small dragon vein with the other. It used an extremely powerful method to insert the dragon vein into his body and connect it carefully for him. When every meridian was connected, Luo Shan could already cultivate again. Moreover, his aptitude could not be compared to the past. Everyone knew that the dragon race had an extremely unique talent for cultivation. Luo Shan's current cultivation speed was comparable to that of the dragon race. Even if he was lazy and unwilling to spend his energy on cultivation, he could continue to improve his strength. If he was diligent, he could leave most people far behind. Therefore, although he was not young now, he could still surpass most people in a short period of time. There was a scale at the heart of the soft armor that was slightly bigger than the rest. The aura it emitted was also very different. He had obtained some memories of the blue dragon race. Qin Yu knew very well that the small scale at the heart was actually the reverse scale of Great Emperor Rongtian. Qin Yu sighed and waved at the soft armor. Suddenly, a silver light flashed. The blue dragon's soft armor flew into his palm and merged into his body through his palm. This was one of the ways to use the soft armor. This soft armor had consumed the corpses of all the powerhouses of the blue dragon ant race. Naturally, there was no need to wear it. It could be merged into his body directly. Naturally, it would increase his strength, especially at the heart. Even a great emperor would have to put in a lot of effort to break the defense there. If one had not reached the late stage of Great Emperor Rongtian and reached the peak of his strength, he would not even be able to break the defense there. Although the defense in other places was slightly weaker, it could not be broken by anyone. A Heaven Palace Realm cultivator would definitely not be able to break it. The last item at the side was a martial technique book. Blue Dragon Move. This was the most powerful martial technique in the hands of the Great Emperor Blue Dragon King. Its strength was evident. It could instantly cause mountains to collapse and the earth to crack. It could even create a dragon shadow clone with the same strength. If it was powerful enough, the dragon shadow clone could even reach hundreds of feet. At that time, it could stir up wind and rain and change the color of heaven and earth with ease. As for the pair of dragon eggs that had been preserved very well, currently, they were placed at the core, together with the most important part of the entire dragon vein. They were carefully protected. Qin Yu went to retrieve them. As they had been preserved using a special method, they should have hatched a long time ago. The two little dragons had yet to be born. However, once they left the special environment, they immediately began to attack. Not long after, they smashed a hole in the huge dragon egg. The two little dragons appeared one after the other. The little dragons that had just been born did not have much energy. They were only finger long. The huge dragon egg was slightly taller than a person. The little dragons that had just been born did not have any intelligence. The first thing it did after breaking out of its shell was to eat the huge dragon egg as its food. Chapter 8:12. In a short while, a palm-sized piece of the huge eggshell disappeared. After that, the two little dragons were full and quickly went back into the eggshell to sleep peacefully. Master, you might as well keep these two little guys with the eggshell. After eating, they will have reached infancy and have begun to have intelligence. After that, according to the Dragon Clan's life trajectory, they will grow step by step. But no matter what, as their keeper, the moment they become sensible, you will always be their only master. You will be treated as a biological father by these two little dragons. Other than loyalty, there will only be intimacy. Different from other subservient dragons, they more or less had their own thoughts. These two little dragons would be one of Qin Yu's helpers in the future. The more he nurtured them, the more time they would not be much worse than the dragon soul. As an ancient dragon, their innate ability and loyalty were absolute. Then keep them by your side. Qin Yu kept the two huge eggshells and placed the two little dragons in his palm. In a short while, the finger-sized little dragons had already grown to the size of a palm. Presumably, in 2 or 3 days, they would grow to more than 1 meter. After Luo Shan received such a huge benefit, he became even more fearful. He originally wanted to repay the favor, but now he found that the favor he owed seemed to be even greater. Let's stop here. Next, I will go to the Sea God Palace to get some things. Then I will go to the mysterious domain. It is not suitable for you to follow us anymore. It just so happens that this sea area is your birthplace, so stop here. Luo Shan really felt a little reluctant, but he also knew that his strength would only be a burden. But he received such a huge benefit. How could he be at ease? No matter how big a person's heart was, they would not be able to feel at ease after receiving so many benefits. Those things are what you deserve. These are your resources. You are willing to tell me, so I can have the following benefits. Compared to my benefits, yours is not worth mentioning. Luo Shan still wanted to express his gratitude, but in the blink of an eye, he had disappeared. After all, he had seen his ability to adapt to the situation. This time, Qin Yu disappeared in the blink of an eye. Otherwise, if he was grabbed by the ankle again, Luo Shan's current strength was like that of an ordinary person, so he couldn't bear it. At that time, even if he didn't die, it would still be a big problem for him. I just want to thank you again. Sigh, I've inexplicably received such a big favor. I don't know if I'll have the chance to see you again in the future. It was unknown whether they would meet again in the future. However, Luo Shan, who had the dragon vein as his martial vein, would definitely not be unknown in the future. This time, he casually went to the Sea God's palace to settle everything he had obtained. Patriarch Sea God had damaged a few of the jade pillars in the dragon vein, so he had to at least offer some compensation. Otherwise, who would be responsible for his compensation? Naturally, he would have to use the Sea God Hall's foundations to make up for the holes. The overall strength of the entire Sea God Palace was slightly higher than the Fire God Palace. However, they didn't have many treasures in their inventory. In terms of resources, they were even poorer than the Fire God Palace. In the end, it merely allowed Qin Yu to reach the great circle of the celestial deity realm, but he could not advance any further. According to the secret method left behind by the Blue Dragon King, Qin Yu easily collected the entire dragon vein. Of course, that included the treasures in the dragon vein. After that, he could use them at any time. However, after thinking about it, he still felt that there was no need. He had seen the things inside. Although they were all good stuff, in reality, most of them were weapons. To him, they weren't very useful. After all, the prosperous dragon clan had already been fighting for 10,000 years. They were constantly busy everywhere. Injuries were already a common occurrence. At this time, medicine and all kinds of resources to increase one's strength became the most scarce existences. There were even very few of them. Even among the last remnants of the entire clan, there weren't many. Even the Sea God Palace's inventory couldn't compare. Fortunately, the dragon vein itself was already a huge gain. The dragon soul didn't rely on the dragon vein much. However, after obtaining the pseudo-dragon vein, his strength still improved slightly. This time, what increased was not his own strength, but his control of his innate ability. All in all, although it looked like he was still in the same realm, there was already a huge difference in essence. After Qin Yu's countless Dragon Clan subordinates saw the dragon vein, they were also extremely excited. Under the situation of not destroying the dragon vein, a group of dragons surrounded the dragon vein and quietly absorbed it to increase their strength. After that, they broke through their own limits one after another. Qin Yu's combat strength increased again after being injured, although he never had the thought of ordering these Dragon Clan to do anything. But these Dragon Clan's improvement made this group of Dragon Clan's loyalty to him jump up several levels. We'll do our best for Master and follow his lead. Master! Master! All of them were rather excited. The dragon's soul snorted. This time, it was very loyal. They just didn't know in the past. No need to care so much about the past. The dragon's soul nodded. Right now, they had to do the most important thing. It was to make a trip to the mystic domain. A streak of scarlet light flashed across Qin Yu's eyes. Those things that Star Luo did, sooner or later, he would pay them back one by one. Returning to this land once again, Qin Yu slowly walked on the streets. No matter where a celestial deity realm expert went, he would receive a bunch of worshipping gazes. As he walked, a few fine specks of light suddenly flashed at the corner of Qin Yu's clothes. Qin Yu stopped his tracks and looked carefully. He found those fine specks of light again. He touched them lightly with his finger and quickly understood what had happened. Someone purposely put mystic trace powder on me. It seems like someone wants to find me. Not long after he said that, the sky suddenly changed color. An extremely familiar aura appeared. Even if it turned into ashes, Qin Yu could recognize the owner of this aura, who took the dragon vein and even severely injured my grandson. Qin Yu gritted his teeth. Xian Yu Emperor. At that time, this person was among the 13 emperors who participated in the encirclement. Enemies are indeed bound to meet on a narrow road. I haven't gone to find you, but you came to me yourself. This matter was so coincidental. Di Xiaoyu was the great-great-grandson of Xian Yu Emperor. Moreover, he only had one son under his name, and he was usually very precious. Previously, his son and grandson had all been plotted against because of various accidents. Therefore, this great-great-grandson was very well protected by him. His strength was not obtained through his own cultivation, but through the accumulation of various natural treasures. When that illusory figure appeared in the sky, Qin Yu also revealed a smile. It was time to meet again. His old friend. Chapter 8:13. The shadow in the sky gradually solidified. The whole bustling street was in chaos, whether it was the street vendors or the passers-by. They all did the same thing, looking up at the sky. The majestic figure seemed to be taller than the sky and thicker than the earth. His deep eyes swept over everyone, and those who were swept by him fell to the ground weakly, covered in cold sweat as if they had just been scooped up from the water. Suddenly, his eyes paused. He caught a small light at the corner of Qin Yu's clothes. It flashed by under the sunlight, but it was not ignored. "It's you, kid. You're really bold." The shadow in the sky suddenly raised his hand, and the palm as wide as a mountain slowly pressed down. Suddenly, it fell rapidly from a height of 10,000 meters and landed accurately on Qin Yu. The passers-by could not bear to look directly, but no one spoke. Such a powerful palm smacking down. Even if it was a celestial deity realm, they would probably be smashed into dust by this slap too. But just as the dust slowly settled, suddenly there was a sudden change. A majestic giant dragon suddenly rose and penetrated the extremely powerful palm, forcibly revealing the whole sky, revealing a bright and beautiful color. A ray of extremely holy sunlight slowly sprinkled down, and the sky that was covered by the shadow finally saw the light of day. Dragon bloodline? It seems that your bloodline is actually quite pure. It turns out that you have this as your capital, so you can be so domineering. Today, I'll let you understand what it means to say that there's always someone better than you. As soon as the Xuanyu Great Emperor's voice fell, he also reached out to grab the giant dragon that soared into the sky. However, the giant dragon was 100 feet long. Even a great emperor could catch in his hand, but there was no way to completely control it. No matter what the realm of strength was, when facing other clans, the dragon clan would always have a natural advantage. However, this giant dragon soon circled and roared and disappeared. There were only two figures standing in the sky, and compared to the shadow, they were really not worth mentioning. They looked just like two small black dots. Xuanyu, Great Emperor, if I had known that Di Xiaoyu was actually your descendant, I would have let his blood splatter on the spot. The giant figure in the sky still did not know where the familiarity of the person in front of him came from, but extremely angry surged in his heart. Do you know what kind of disaster your words will bring to you? Since you're so arrogant, I can't let you live. Qin Yu sneered. He allowed the attacks to land on his body, but they dissipated in the blink of an eye. He was still standing there, unharmed. The item that he had just obtained not long ago had already come in handy. It could be said that he did not even have the chance to warm it up. When Qin Yu saw an old acquaintance from before his reincarnation, how could he not go up and say hello? In a flash, he arrived in front of the giant. This huge, illusory figure was merely a clone that had descended. However, it was just a thought clone. Of course, he had already entered the heavenly fusion realm. Even if it was just a thought clone, it was still powerful enough to be on par with the full circle of the Heaven Palace realm. Next time, you're going to directly descend with your real body. You're looking down on your old friend too much. Azure Dragon battling the heavens. Qin Yu had used an old trick that he often used. The profound Feather Great Emperor had only sent a thought clone. He did not need to use any complicated methods. After being improved and strengthened, the heavens battling divine formation was enough to deal with this illusory figure. How powerful was the illusory figure of the Great Emperor? Under everyone's shocked and incredulous gazes, the powerful illusory figure was ignited by the divine fire. Suddenly, it disappeared with a boom. It was supposed to win and should not be used as fuel. However, the heavens battling divine formation that had merged with the divine fire easily devoured the illusory figure. It was completely absorbed, and not even a trace of it was left. Qin Yu put away the wisp of divine fire that seemed to have grown a lot stronger. Now that he could not stay here for long, there were many people who had witnessed this battle. Presumably, soon, all the big and small forces in the mysterious domain would come to check it out. The Dragon Soul and Qin Yu soon disappeared. And in a hurry, people who had rushed over because of the powerful aura had also arrived one after another. Wu Tianshi, why are you here too? Didn't you also rush over as fast as you could? There was the aura of the Great Emperor just now. But now, there's not even a trace of it left. Obviously, it did not leave. It was caused by an external force. However, after asking the ordinary onlookers, the people who had rushed over using various extreme methods were all in disbelief. How could Great Emperor Rongtian have died at the hands of a heavenly god? They had all sensed the aura here and paid a huge price to rush over as fast as they could. Among them, a small number of people had even paid a huge price to arrive in time. They were clearly thousands of miles away, but they had arrived in less than half an incense stick's worth of time. However, they had never imagined that the thought of the Great Emperor would be destroyed in such a short period of time. Moreover, the person who had caused all of this had disappeared before they had arrived. It's said that he's a young man who's already at the heavenly god realm. But even a young and promising genius might not be able to surpass so many levels. Such powerful combat strength that can challenge people of a higher level reminds me of someone. All of a sudden, it was as if a switch had been pressed on everyone, and they all stopped talking. That person would forever be a taboo in the mysterious domain. If anyone touched him, they would become public enemy number one. Even his name would not be mentioned. All of a sudden, someone took the lead and laughed, bringing this matter to the back of their minds, pushing all the blame onto the young and promising youngsters. No one would consider the possibility of that person returning. A total of 13 great emperors had joined forces. No matter how powerful they were, they could only die with hatred in their hearts. In the past, he was an existence that everyone, even a late-stage great emperor, had to look up to. But now, it had become a very, very long history. Qin Yu had already left with the Dragon Soul. After letting the divine fire devour Great Emperor Xian Yu's thought clone, he sensed that he should be in the mysterious domain. With his current strength, ordinary people would naturally think of retreating if they could. However, If he was the kind of person who would choose to retreat, he would not have attracted so many people's attention back then because of his strength. An eye for an eye, an eye for an eye. It was rare to find a familiar figure in the world of 10 Directions. Of course, he had to go over and meet him properly to see how his old friend was doing. Chapter 814. In a certain closed cultivation room, a middle-aged man with a slightly white horn and a ruddy face suddenly spat out a trace of blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyebrows were tightly knitted together. He suddenly opened his eyes. His dark eyes seemed to hide an abyss of the sea with an ancient aura. It was as if he had come from ancient times with extremely terrifying power and history. He had experienced countless years and vicissitudes. Why does it feel so familiar? No, it can't be him. He was already dead. He was definitely dead. He couldn't even care about the injuries on his body. The clone of consciousness that he sent out to chase after him had completely turned into ashes. There wasn't even a trace of ashes left. All of the power, even the little bit of ashes left after being burned, was all devoured by the divine fire to strengthen itself. Every part of the great emperor's body, even if it was just a consciousness, contained extremely powerful and even terrifying energy. Of course, ordinary people wouldn't dare to touch it. No one dared to provoke a person who was called a great emperor. Moreover, they had no way to absorb and refine that extremely pure and huge energy. However, for a small flame from the divine realm, only extremely huge and the purest energy in the world could provide nourishment for it. The Xuanyu Great Emperor was severely injured because of this. Even his consciousness was completely devoured, leaving almost no trace behind. He couldn't even remember the scene at that time completely. Now, he could only see a trace of familiarity from that blurry shadow. Although this trace of familiarity shocked him. With a wave of his hand, he called his great-great-grandson over again and asked him about every detail in order to determine that person's identity. Di Xiaoyu felt extremely aggrieved. Ever since he was born, he had never felt so aggrieved. Experts in the heavenly palace realm could only bow and scrape in front of him. Even many of his concubines were experts in the heavenly palace realm. That person is an arrogant and conceited kid. I admit that he's very powerful, but he can't be compared to you at all. His strength is only in the quintessential saint realm. Di Xiaoyu obviously didn't know that Qin Yu's dragon soul had already advanced to a higher realm. He was only one step away from the heavenly oasis realm. Moreover, because of his personal bias, he had mixed in a lot of his own personal thoughts. However, it was precisely because of this that Xinyu Great Emperor did not take this matter to heart. All he wanted was to kill the two unknown quintessential saint stage powerhouses. But now, he only felt anger, the anger of being deceived and fooled. The quintessential saint stage that you're talking about is now a perfected heavenly God stage. And the strength you speak of is merely not bad, yet you easily destroyed one of my consciousness clones in the blink of an eye. Of course, a spiritual clone like this couldn't be compared to a real spiritual body. The spirit body had almost the same mobility and strength as the main body. It was even closely related to him. However, if it was just a thought clone, it wasn't that important. Although he would still be severely injured after his consciousness clone was destroyed, he would be able to recover as long as he recuperated. However, this clone of his had at least 1/10 of his strength. Even 1/10 of his strength was not enough to take down a heavenly god. This was not just a matter of strength. This was already heaven-defying. Tell me honestly, what did you do to anger him at that time? Di Xiaoyu still didn't understand the importance of this matter. However, under such a serious interrogation, he didn't dare to change any of the details with any personal thoughts. Instead, he honestly explained the cause and effect of everything that had happened. Of course, this included the fact that he didn't think highly of him at all in the beginning. It also included some secrets inside the Sea God Palace. It even included the dragon vein that appeared in the end. A complete dragon vein that was extremely attractive even to the profound Feather Emperor. His breathing couldn't help but quicken slightly. He hurriedly asked, and couldn't even maintain his composure. Are you sure it's a complete dragon vein? There are even treasures stored by the dragon clan in it? Di Xiaoyu relentlessly exaggerated on this matter, although he really didn't see anything. However, this didn't stop him from guessing and adding details over and over again. He described a few jade pillars as a storage room filled with all kinds of treasures. There were also things in the depths that he had never even seen before. He described them as the most precious treasures left behind by the dragon clan. Although in a way, he guessed correctly, and it was highly consistent with the truth. It seems that I have to make a trip in person. Xinyu Great Emperor had lived in this world for more than 10,000 years and was definitely experienced. He knew better than anyone else about a complete dragon vein that contained the wealth of the entire dragon clan. Just how attractive was it to people at their level? The accumulated wealth not only represented the loyalty of countless, but also the strength of powerful subordinates. And if it was really as huge and complete as Di Xiaoyu said, just its appearance could cause the sea to shake. There must be something left behind by a great emperor-level existence in it. However, after all, he had lived for 10,000 years. He wouldn't be so impatient. Let's wait and see where he's going. No matter what kind of talent he has, he can't escape from my hands. Since he got a complete dragon vein, then according to his realm, he shouldn't know how to use it. Let's find a powerful person to keep an eye on them first. After confirming their purpose, I'll make a move. Although Di Xiaoyu felt a little aggrieved, he still nodded in agreement. He didn't have any right to express his opinion. Although he was the only great-grandson who was doted on the most, he knew very well why he had all this identity and status. Therefore, he would never go against any of Xianyu Great Emperor's opinions. Suddenly, a big hole was blasted in the entire sealed cultivation room. The air was filled with a scorching hot feeling. You don't have to look for me. I'm already here. My old friend, long time no see. Have you ever thought that I would appear in front of you again in this way? Xinyu slowly walked out of the big hole with the dragon soul. Amidst the flying dust, a figure gradually appeared. Even when the face of the figure was right in front of Xuanyu Emperor, he still couldn't figure out what was going on. Such a familiar figure, and the tone of the voice made him feel like he was struck by lightning. His face was full of disbelief. Chapter 8:15. Back then, he had watched as the person who had died stood in front of him once again. How was that possible? There were a total of 13 of them, 13 great emperors, and some of them were even in the late stage. Could it be that they didn't hurt this person at all? Suddenly, he remembered the fear he felt when he was suppressed by that powerful strength 10,000 years ago. He had forgotten that it had been 10,000 years. Now, he once again recalled those fears of the past. It was as if these 10,000 years of freedom were just a dream. He wouldn't wake up soon because of the strength of Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul. At first, he thought that they might just look similar, but after seeing the Dragon Soul, he completely dispelled that thought. That's absolutely correct. The Dragon Soul had always been a loyal follower of Qin Yu. They were forever connected by a contract and would not easily separate from each other. It was also a sign that the god of war, whose combat strength far surpassed all the experts back then, seemed to have returned. It's actually, at this moment, he felt very complicated, and his tone was even more inexplicable. He didn't know if it was more resentment or fear. Yes, I'm back again. Aren't you going to welcome me? No. You already welcomed me just now. How could I forget about that? I'm so sorry. Qin suddenly took out the Chaos Dragon Spear. He still preferred to hold this weapon as it was more enjoyable to kill. Now, it's time for me to respond to your welcome. Are you ready? The fear in the Xuanyu Emperor's heart couldn't be expressed in words. But soon, he forced himself to calm down. As one of the people who had lived a stable life until now, being calm and never taking the initiative to stir up trouble were his strengths. A long time ago, he had indeed lived under the suppression of this person's strength. But now, it seemed that he still had the power to fight. The Dragon Soul had always looked down on such two-faced people who pretended to be fearful. All of them were downright despicable people. Why are you still talking to him? If you want to fight, then fight. If you want to kill, then kill. Since we've met, some debts should be settled properly. Di Xiaoyu didn't understand what had happened at all. When he was born, it had been a long time since the incident that happened back then. It was a taboo topic that no one had ever mentioned. He had never even heard of this name before. Of course, most people only knew of Qin Yu's nickname and didn't know his real name. But whether it was the title or the real name, it had long become a topic that no one was willing to talk about. What's going on? Do you know each other? Di Xiaoyu's intuition told him that there must be some grudges from many years ago. However, there was one thing that he could see clearly. The only thing that was lacking between the two of them was the powerful aura that had yet to erupt. Based on his understanding of Xianyu Heavenly Emperor, Di Xiaoyu knew that Xianyu Heavenly Emperor was very wary and even a little fearful. However, he, who did not know the history, did not understand why a great emperor expert would fear a mere heavenly god. Qin Yu's dragon soul clearly hadn't even reached the heavenly ethereal realm. Scram to the side. If you don't know anything, then don't ever know. You won't benefit from knowing these things. You shouldn't be asking about these old histories. How could profound Feather Great Emperor be in the mood to discuss things with these juniors? Or even an explanation? He simply didn't have enough time. The only thing he could do was to be vigilant. His impression of Qin Yu was still stuck at the scene where he was able to fight 13 great emperors by himself. No matter what realm he was in, he could erupt with power that was dozens of times stronger than those of the same realm. After calculating the difference in strength between the two of them, his mood naturally became calmer. Although he was still nervous, he was no longer unable to extricate himself from his memories. However, he really thought too simply. He had thought of the matter too simply. He had also thought of the current Qin Yu too simply. Soon, he paid a huge price for this. Facing a true great emperor expert, Qin Yu didn't dare to hold back. Although he was very confident in his own strength, he didn't dare to be careless. No matter who the enemy was, he had to unleash his most powerful attack. He had to use his most powerful technique for every move. This was a kind of rule. Even the ancestor devil statue was helpless when facing a true top-notch expert in the 10 Directions world. He couldn't do anything about it and couldn't suppress it forcefully. However, this didn't mean that he didn't have other methods to obtain the final victory. Mysterious Feather Heavenly Formation. This was the famous formation he created himself. Later on, he was called the Mysterious Feather Emperor because of this. It could defeat an expert who was slightly stronger than himself. It could obtain victory with absolute strength. Di Xiaoyu's eyes widened. He couldn't believe that a heavenly deity mirror could force the Mysterious Feather Emperor to use his most powerful technique. It was as if this technique was used to defeat him. A huge totem slowly appeared in the sky. It was outlined stroke by stroke. It looked slow, but it was completed at the fastest speed. It even broke all the records he had for many years. It was the first time he completed the entire heavenly formation in the shortest time possible. The reason why it was called a heavenly formation was because it was homonym for heavenly suppression. Even if the heavens came, it could suppress it forcefully. It was a powerful totem that seemed to contain the power of the great Tao. Everyone in the Mysterious Feather Heavenly Realm looked over. Oh my God, what happened? The sovereign actually used his most powerful technique. Could it be that other great emperors are here to attack? Let's continue watching. I don't think this matter is that simple. Everyone, put on the most urgent alarm and hide. This is bad. When a Mysterious Feather Heavenly Formation falls, everyone in the Mysterious Feather Heavenly Realm will be severely injured. Run. The Mysterious Feather Emperor had spent thousands of years to create a powerful force. Now, it was a mess because danger could fall from above at any time. However, the huge totem did not suppress them. Only the people involved could feel an extremely powerful force pouring down. It almost fixed them in place. Those who were slightly weaker, such as Di Xiaoyu, could not even move a finger. Even if they wanted to, they could not move even a little. Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul were only slightly affected by this pressure when it first started to pour down. However, it could not affect their movements. They quickly adapted to the strong binding force and moved freely in the heavenly formation. Your formation is still not good. Even though it has been 10,000 years, it has not improved at all. Under the horrified gaze of the mysterious Feather Emperor, Qin Yu suddenly moved. Chapter 8:16. 2 drops of crystal-clear, ruby-like blood suddenly appeared out of nowhere and took on various shapes in the air. Suddenly, they turned into thin lines that connected to form a strange diagram. There seemed to be a dragon circling within it. Emperor Xian, you had a bad feeling. He immediately bit his fingertip and changed some details of the formation. Do you think the famous formation that I carefully designed only has this much power? No matter how strong you are, you can't be stronger than the heavens and the martial Tao you practice. When he was researching the formation, he was ambitious. He wanted to suppress the heavens and the martial Tao that everyone studied. Suddenly, after coming into contact with the blood, the formation with the ancient aura of chaos turned blood red and emitted a faint smell of blood. In order to improve it, I added the souls of thousands of living beings. Flesh and blood as the lines, and living souls as the spirits. A sacrifice so much. Why can't I suppress a heavenly god like you? No matter how strong you were, you still fell in the end. Now that you've reincarnated, you're just a heavenly god. A heavenly god. He seemed to be mumbling to himself, or maybe he was just trying to boost his confidence. In any case, he believed what he said. The formation that made the emperor famous originally carried a vast amount of righteousness, as if it was mixed with a trace of righteousness from the beginning of the chaos. However, it had now turned blood red and was filled with an ominous aura. Qin Yu looked at the formation above his head solemnly. Suddenly, he shook his head and sighed. You've gone mad. In order to pursue strength, you've embarked on such a path of no return. But you seem to have forgotten that the righteousness of the heavens is a natural counter to this evil aura. He has too many nemesis. It just so happens that I'm a counter to this dense, evil aura. The diagram in front of him was drawn with the pure blood essence of the Azure Dragon. It was supplemented with the righteousness and foundation that the Azure Dragon tribe had accumulated over tens of thousands of years. During the most difficult period, they had saved more than thousands of lives, including thousands of living beings. When the countless lives were added together, they had accumulated a vast amount of righteousness. In the end, the Azure Dragon tribe willingly sacrificed their lives to protect their descendants. It was the most sincere belief. Under the superposition of the two, and with the blood essence of the young Azure Dragon as a medium, if it was the previous array formation, Qin Yu would have a slight headache for a moment. But now, everything was as easy as pie. Before the power of the entire array formation could erupt, Qin Yu had already shot out the seal in front of him. The image was only the size of a palm. Compared to the monstrous array formation that could envelop heaven and earth, it was insignificant. However, when the two collided, an extremely brilliant golden light suddenly erupted. Vaguely, an extremely powerful dragon was roaring furiously. He was even slightly stronger than Great Emperor Rongtian. Clearly, he had already touched upon the threshold of the God realm, and had even taken half a step into it. This was, of course, the great strength accumulated by tens of thousands of experts was enough to be compared with those who could truly ascend to the God realm. The profound feather Great Emperor couldn't hold on for long under this boundless aura. Such powerful strength made him feel as if he had returned to that battle 10,000 years ago, when corpses were strewn all over the place. Even though all of them had joined forces, they had still sacrificed tens of thousands of people as the vanguard. In addition, in the end, they had all exchanged injuries for injuries, and only then did they manage to stay there forever. After that, everyone who had participated in the battle had more or less been left with some hidden injuries. This was also one of the reasons why he had always kept a low profile. And now, Retribution had finally arrived. In a daze, he seemed to have seen his own corpse lying on the cold stone floor, dripping with blood. His eyes widened as he looked at the sky in disbelief, as if he was asking why the heavens were so unfair, giving someone such powerful combat strength, and even allowing him to be even more powerful and talented after reincarnating, and even having endless opportunities. The dragon soul approached and was about to end this person's life. Suddenly, the profound feather-great emperor let out an extremely sharp cry. "Don't kill me. I'll tell you everything. Don't you want to know where your master went? He's in the Xian domain, and I've been guarding him all this time. I'm just following orders. As long as you choose not to kill me, I can release him right now and let you reunite with your master. Xing Luo ordered me to do all of this. It has nothing to do with me." Qin, you had the dragon soul withdraw the final attack that it had been accumulating power for. You'd better pray that everything you say is true. At this moment of life and death, he no longer had the guts to lie. Trembling in fear, he slowly led Qin Yu in a certain direction. Although their speed wasn't considered slow, when combined with their strength, their current speed was indeed like a snail's crawl. Their eyes darted around, and no one knew what they were thinking. Perhaps they were taking the opportunity to escape. The dragon's soul kicked one of the great emperors to the ground. Of course, it was very difficult for him to do so with his current strength. Under normal circumstances, he might be suppressed by the dragon soul's powerful aura even if he tried to get close, let alone do such a thing. However, this great emperor was clearly at a disadvantage now, and he didn't dare to resist at all. Qin, you didn't stop him. It was indeed time to teach him a lesson, regardless of whether it was because of the past or what he had done all these years. Helping the evildoer, using the blood, flesh, and souls of tens of thousands of living beings to increase his own strength. He walked the path of evil. After they arrived at their destination, Qin Yu started to feel a bit homesick. However, this was still a big matter. If Xian Yu Emperor was given the slightest chance, he would escape without hesitation. No one knew if he would tell Xing Luo everything. After an unknown period of time, the master and disciple finally met again. For a moment, they were speechless as they sized each other up. Xian Tian Senzin's white robe was spotless, and his thick black hair was standing tall. His gaze was deep, and his aura was unfathomable. However, there was an extremely comfortable aura around him that didn't belong to any of the 10 realms. The entire prison was built with pitch-black materials, as if it was a dark night that would never see daylight. When Qin Yu entered, he had passed through more than 10 checkpoints, and every one of them was extremely tight. However, all of them together weren't enough to lock up Xian Tian Senzin, unless there was some sort of special factor in between. Only when he walked closer did Qin Yu discover exactly what it was that was capable of sealing the profound heaven immortal exalted. He actually dared to plant a fallen immortal demonic nail in you. This was an extremely evil item. Even in the God world, it was extremely difficult to find it. Moreover, in the 10 realms, it was impossible to even find the materials to make a fallen immortal demonic nail. In the 10 realms, if such a nail was stuck in one's body for a long time, it could even kill a great emperor. However, Xian Tian Senzin had more than 10 of them on him. They were dripping with blood. Chapter 817. The pitch-black nail had even turned into a dark red color. It was obvious that it had been there for a long time. Qin Yu only touched the nail slightly with his hand. He only touched a large patch of blood. It was the result of years of dry blood. Layer after layer, there were more and more of them, and they became denser and denser. Now it was extremely shocking. Master is fine. Even if there are a dozen nails, they can only trap me here. The energy contained within was enough to turn an ordinary immortal into a monster that everyone wanted to kill. However, as time passed, he was only trapped here and wasn't affected by anything else. The profound heaven immortal exalted's gaze was extremely distant, as if he could see through time and years. He could see through the current Qin Yu and everything he had experienced. Although he felt like he was completely seen through, Qin Yu wasn't impatient. Because this was the master who had raised him up, he knew that no matter what, Xiantian Shenzhen, who had always been protective, would definitely stand on his side. It would be the same even if he turned to the demonic path one day. Obviously, he wasn't the only one who knew this. As his senior brother in name, Star Luo was also incomparably clear. That was why he spent so much effort to find the fallen, immortal devil nail from the God Realm. It was all for the sake of getting rid of his last and biggest obstacle. I'm afraid there are other doubts about his identity. However, now that you and I have met again, it's not good to talk about this person, lest it spoils our mood. Qin Yu nodded. Whenever he thought of that person, he couldn't help but want to eat him alive. But now, it was naturally more important to save him. Time passed. In a completely dark and sealed place. He couldn't feel any fluctuations, other than himself. Only the fallen immortal devil nail was tormenting him at all times. In such darkness, ordinary people wouldn't be able to stay for tens of thousands of years. Even if it was just a day, they would be driven crazy. If it was a year, it would be enough to destroy a proud genius of a major power. But after tens of thousands of years, after regaining his freedom, Xiantian Shenzhen was extremely calm. Master, do you want me to find a treasure for you to recuperate? Even if the fallen immortal devil nail was forcefully removed. However, it still left numerous bloody holes on Xiantian Shenzhen's body. Xiantian Shenzhen only shook his head, smiled faintly, and asked for a dagger. There were countless collections in the dragon vein. Moreover, there were many different types of weapons. However, there was only one dagger. He immediately found the most valuable dragon-scale dagger from the pile of items. It was the best weapon among them, and it was only slightly inferior to the Chaos Dragon Spear. He took the dragon-scale dagger with some surprise. It's made from the scales of the great Emperor Azure Dragon, and it's also infused with various precious minerals. It seems like they didn't make you suffer too much. During the years he was locked up, he had always been worried. He was afraid that his most beloved disciple would suffer. He also received some bad news from the Star Luo Empire, but he had always believed that his disciple would not die so easily. Qin Yu felt a surge of warmth in his heart. Sure enough, the person who loved him the most in this world was his master. Previously, I accidentally obtained the dragon vein left behind by the Azure Dragon clan, as well as the remnants of the entire clan. After saying that, he let Xiantian Shenzhen look at his gains over the past few days. It was all the dragons that had submitted to him, as well as the dragon vein that he had obtained by accident. As for the other scattered collections, they were not worth mentioning. Even Xiantian Shenzhen could not help but feel surprised after seeing these gains. Then he laughed heartily. I knew you wouldn't let me down. To have such a disciple in this life, I, Xiantian Shenzhen, can use my life to show off to other Shenzhen. Qin Yu was a little embarrassed. His strength was indeed not bad, and the speed of his improvement was definitely shocking. But currently, there was still a period of time before he could reach Xiantian Shenzhen's realm. He needed to work hard, but thinking about it, it should not be much longer. After receiving the dimmed dragon scale dagger, Xiantian Shenzhen did not hesitate to inject his immortal qi into it. Of course, in the blink of an eye, all the flesh that was stained with a faint black mist was removed. By the time he finished treating all the wounds, his white robes were completely dyed red. But Xiantian Shenzhen's expression did not change at all. He had removed the trace of demonic qi that had affected him the most. The wounds on his body were already slowly healing. Don't worry about me. It's just a small matter. That's right. The things you have now are still not enough. Suddenly, his gaze fell on Xiantian Emperor, who had been standing at the side, not daring to move. This guy should have some good stuff on him. It's a pity that I'm injured now, so I can't bring you the real good stuff. Qin Yu did not take this to heart. It was already very good that he was able to save Xiantian Shenzhen. As for his injuries, he could slowly recover. Of course, Shenzhen's foundation was not something others could imagine. Xiantian Emperor was picked up like a little chick. Xiantian Shenzhen did not even say anything, but he had already handed over all his belongings, trembling all over. He had been pillaging for years, and with the offerings of many factions, he had quite a lot of good stuff. After seeing those things, Chinyu finally understood where all the good stuff in the sea god's palace had gone, and why he hadn't found much even after searching the entire palace. It was because all the good stuff had been offered up. They were all in the hands of Xiantian Emperor, and there were countless warehouses piled up. There were even a few tall towers, each with different treasures. They were all piled up, with the lowest grade on the lower levels and the highest on the upper levels. When all of them were piled up, they were taller than a mountain. These things are just average, but they're still somewhat useful to you. There were countless extremely precious treasures that could make Emperor Rongtian go crazy. In Xiantian Senzen's eyes, they were just barely enough for his disciple to use. He even looked down on them a little. If he returned to his original place, there would naturally be more and better things. There were not many things that could catch his eye. Even the best few items could only be at the bottom of his collection. Doesn't he have a formation on him? Xiantian Senzen rubbed his chin. He finally found something good from the terrified Xiantian Emperor. At least it was better than the things that could barely catch his eye, no matter how unwilling he was. Xiantian Emperor had to yield in the face of overwhelming power. Tens of thousands of years of hard work. He had to hand it over. His heart was bleeding, but he still forced a smile. Chapter 8:18. The profound Feather Emperor had spent so much effort and even plotted in the dark for 10,000 years to finally amass this treasure. How could it be ordinary? But in the eyes of the profound Sky Senzen, it was just a decent defensive item. Although it's barely enough. If it's damaged, I can just throw it away. Something like this can only be used casually. The profound Feather Emperor was so angry that he almost vomited blood. His trump card, the trump card that he had kept hidden for so long, the trump card that he had honed, was only evaluated as something that could only be used casually. But he did not dare to refute. His life was in the hands of others. The longer he lived, the more he cherished his life. He did not want to die for no reason. Even if he had to pay a high price, he wanted to preserve his life. With his cultivation, as long as he could preserve his life, he would be able to make a name for himself in the Ten Directions world. Chinyu was a little disgusted, but since it was a gift from his master, he accepted it. It was tainted with the smell of blood. Even if its function was not bad, and once its full power was unleashed, even a great emperor would be suppressed. But the smell of blood was really unpleasant. You don't have to worry about the smell. I've already removed it for you. As for the evil aura, it's also a type of power. If used properly, it can still be useful. As for the living souls, when you don't want to use them anymore, or when they're no longer useful to you, you can release them. The rotten smell of flesh and blood had indeed disappeared without a trace. However, there wasn't much morality either. There was only some gray mist circulating within the formation. Every single wisp of this gray mist was a living soul. Any bit of it could be a large number of lives. However, he did not feel the slightest bit guilty about using the power of these living souls, because he was not the one who killed them. Moreover, as the profound Sky Senzen said, once he was done, he would release all the living souls. Based on the speed of your advancement, I think you won't be able to hold on for long. Looks like I'll have to go back one day. I'm so poor. Chinyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he took the palm-sized array diagram. Although he had to use the power of living souls, everything was ready-made and well-prepared. There was no need for him to kill indiscriminately. Can I leave for now? As soon as he finished speaking, Xiantian Senzen noticed this person who had been neglected. He stared intently at him for a long while. He waved his hand and pushed all the responsibility to Chinyu. The grudges from before don't have much to do with him. Disciple, do as you see fit, life or death. This could be said to be a very hot potato. Chinyu didn't know how to deal with him. If it were any other time, he would have killed them cleanly. That would be considered as cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots, not leaving behind any future troubles. Moreover, the grudges between them had been involved for too long and wouldn't be resolved so easily. Women's benevolence was never good, especially to all martial artists. Women's benevolence was the most useless thing. After thinking for a long time, he finally decided on a suitable scale. If he let him go safely, he would more or less bring some trouble to him in the future. As for life and death, that was a matter of the past. I'll destroy your martial veins and cultivation. From now on, everything will disappear like smoke. You and I will have nothing to do with each other. As he spoke, he attacked like lightning. It was unbelievably fast. Accompanied by a scream, another great emperor, Rongtian, disappeared from this world. Of course, he was still alive. However, a great emperor who had cultivated for 10,000 years was now just an old man with one foot in the grave. This was thousands of times more painful than killing him directly. He didn't have much of a grudge with great Emperor Xiaoyu. After all, they had just met a few times. Xiantian Shenzhen and Qinyu left one after another. The fact that great Emperor Xianyu's chest circumference had been destroyed couldn't be hidden. It was as if it had grown wings and instantly became known to everyone. The building was about to collapse. The person who could suppress these outsiders with strength was no longer around. Or rather, his existence was worse than not being around. This was because all the enemies he had offended in the past 10,000 years had come to find him. They either hit him when he was down or wantonly ridiculed and robbed him, just like what they had done to others in the past. Great Emperor Xiaoyu was only in the heavenly, ethereal realm. He didn't have any strength at all. All his martial cultivation was forcefully accumulated. Of course, he couldn't control such a huge mountain gate by himself. Even those who were once his supply and demand were now standing high above him because they were stronger than him. As for those concubines in the heavenly palace realm, they were only trying to please a great emperor, not a piece of trash. Their fates were obvious. However, all of this had nothing to do with Qinyu anymore. Within the Ten Directions world, there were thousands of prosperous areas. Naturally, there were some places that were desolate and uninhabited. It could even be said that no living creatures could exist, even if it was just a weed. Places like this had no value at all. But now, Qinyu and Xiantian Shenzhen had arrived at such an abandoned, nameless domain. Things back then were a little complicated. If you want to take revenge, I won't stop you. Take everything that has happened these years as an example. After all, 10,000 years have passed unknowingly. 10,000 years was just a few words. But the weight of these words was extremely heavy. The world was spinning, and the world was changing. The world today was very different from the world in the past. There were thousands of changes in the various forces. Some sects were declining, and some were rising. Qinyu and the Dragon's Soul talked tirelessly. They had experienced more than thousands of hardships along the way. But they also obtained huge opportunities and broke through their limits time and time again. Suddenly, Xiantian Shenzhen grabbed Qinyu's vital gate. This was the most important place. Qinyu didn't think that Xiantian Shenzhen would do anything to him, but he still reflexively pulled his hand out. After doing this series of actions, he felt that his reaction was a little too extreme. It was no wonder that he reacted this way. It wasn't that he didn't trust his master, nor was it that he was unfamiliar with him. Although the master and disciple didn't speak a word, Xiantian Shenzhen already understood why Qinyu reacted this way. This was all because of Xingluo. It's been hard on you these years. However, I see that your aptitude is indeed top-notch, and you have endless opportunities. Your speed of improvement in this life is much faster than in your previous life. No wonder everyone says that they have to improve their strength through training. It seems that this is true. Chapter 819. As for what was going on with this series of reincarnations, Xiantian Shenzhen didn't ask a single question. Even Qinyu didn't hide anything. He didn't seem to be curious and didn't care. Qinyu was never arrogant. No matter how heaven-defying his cultivation speed was, he was never arrogant or rash. If he didn't accumulate it over a long period of time, even if he was suddenly given so many opportunities, he wouldn't be able to absorb them. What's more, these opportunities were all fought for by himself. Relying on his own means to obtain legitimate opportunities, coupled with his hard work, it was expected that he would have such progress. However, to improve so quickly in such a short period of time, there will more or less be some impact. Although your body is fine, and your state of mind is even more profound, there is no flaw. But you should still take this stainless pill. Stainless pill. The name seemed ordinary, but if someone could really recognize it, they would know that it was needed when one was about to step into the immortal realm. From the great emperor to the immortal realm, the strictest thing was to question oneself. No one could completely face their own heart. From ancient times until now, there were very few people who could cultivate the great Tao. This was because the human heart was complicated and there were very few who could maintain their original heart. The stainless pill could clear all distracting thoughts in one's heart in advance. It was an item that could unify all thoughts and clear the heart. Such a precious pill was enough to make the whole world go crazy. No matter who it was, they would want to snatch it at all costs. When the time came, it wouldn't only be the big and small forces in the various regions that would cause a sensation. The one who couldn't wait to get this stainless pill, even if it meant going bankrupt, would be the late-stage great emperor. Is it still too early to take this stainless pill now? If it was someone else, of course it wouldn't work. Just the medicinal effect of the stainless pill is enough to make him go crazy and kill himself. But how can I, Xiantian Senzin's disciple, be the same as those ordinary people? Now is a good time. Quickly take it. Xiantian Senzin's tone was full of pride, and he didn't hide it at all. Qin Yu swallowed the stainless pill and immediately sat down to digest the medicinal effect. Although he closed his eyes, he skimmed through some of the things that left the deepest impression in his mind. The divine pagoda from before was slowly moving backward, as if time was flowing backward. As the memories receded, Qin Yu saw himself who had just woken up. However, he didn't stop there. His memories continued to flip back. The scene was so intense that it was as if it was happening right in front of him. Betrayal and assassination. And that moment of despair. Qin Yu forgot all about his identity in this life. The only thing that appeared in his mind was Xing Luo's smiling face. Kill everyone in front of you. It's these people who consigned you to eternal damnation. It's this good brother in front of you who joined forces with outsiders to force you into a corner. What are you waiting for? If you continue like this, you will only repeat the same mistakes. Do you want to experience it again? That kind of despair, that kind of powerlessness? Of course not. Moreover, no matter what, he would never despair, nor would he feel powerless. Qin Yu was indeed deeply immersed in it, and he was indeed moved by these memory fragments. However, he didn't admit to the last sentence. Even if he had been forced into a corner, to him, those people were still defeated by him. How could it be considered a success if he had used an overwhelming advantage in numbers and schemes to achieve victory? He had never thought of himself as a failure, nor would he be troubled by the past. Perhaps Xing Luo was an obstacle on his path of cultivation in the future. However, he definitely wouldn't become an inner demon. One day, he would personally remove this obstacle. Good, as expected of my disciple. When he came out of the illusion, his mind was completely clear. It was as if something had changed, but it also didn't seem to be different. His strength, cultivation base, and the environment around him still hadn't changed. However, they all knew that Qin Yu had already changed compared to before. Now, the Emperor won't be able to trap you anymore. This was a trial that no one could pass. No matter who it was, they wouldn't be able to remain calm and collected. This was because this trial contained the deepest secrets in their hearts. People might be able to resist external enemies because they were strong. However, whether one's heart was strong or whether they could defeat themselves had nothing to do with strength. Once you step into the realm of the gods and truly become an immortal, you'll be considered to have obtained the great Tao. At that time, you'll be completely different from the people in this world. Strength is no longer the only standard to measure yourself. There's also a strong heart. Only then can you not panic in the face of trouble and comprehend more exquisite martial arts. Qin Yu seemed to have understood something in his heart. Even the dragon soul beside him felt that it had touched some barrier. However, that thin barrier seemed to be right in front of it, but it couldn't be touched. It was as if it was just an illusion. Don't be anxious. Take it slow. Not long after the dragon soul said that, Qin Yu's strength broke through again. This time, it was really a matter of course. Even if he wanted to suppress it, he couldn't. After thinking through some old matters, it was as if a huge burden had been removed from his heart. In short, he had always wanted to fight steadily and not increase his strength in a short period of time. In the end, he still couldn't control it and increased it. However, when the conditions were right, success was the best, especially when it came to increasing one's realm. This meant that the foundation of a cultivator was as solid as the earth, unshakable. This time, it was the dragon soul that only touched the edge and couldn't completely grasp the opportunity this time. Even if he was only a step away from breaking through, it wasn't good to just take it. Otherwise, his foundation would be unstable. Seeing that the dragon soul seemed to be a little anxious, Xiantian Shenzhen smiled faintly and flicked his finger. A white light merged into the dragon soul's forehead. After a while, the dragon soul's aura also strengthened. The master and disciple had always been close, but this time they couldn't communicate too much. After an unknown amount of time had passed, Qin Yu's dragon soul had stopped its questioning. Other than Xiantian Shenzhen, the real master, no one else would be so patient to answer any of their small questions in detail. However, this wouldn't last for more than a few days. Once he got out, Xiantian Shenzhen naturally had to return to the ninefold god realm. He had been trapped for so long. Of course, he had to rush back immediately. There were many things that he needed to confirm and deal with. These 2 days were specially squeezed out by him. However, it was obvious that he couldn't delay any longer. Chapter 820. Take care, Master. Xiantian Shenzhen was a little reluctant to part with him, but he knew what was more important. I think with your cultivation speed, you'll be able to meet me in the ninefold divine realm soon. When the time comes, the two of us, master and disciple, can catch up. Qin Yu suddenly thought of a person. However, because of the short moment, he restrained himself from asking. Xiantian Shenzhen was very familiar with him. How could he not see the change in his mood? You must be thinking of Shuelon. Fine, Master will help you look around. See if there are any traces of Shuelon in the Ten Directions world. An extremely vast and majestic force spread out. It spread to the surroundings in an unquestionable manner. From this nameless region, it slowly spread to other places. Sea region, fire region, void region, dark region. All the forces in the ten-sided world, no matter where they were, could feel this majestic, immortal force. And the speed of its spread was still increasing. Soon, it had spread everywhere. Even the most inconspicuous corner was enveloped by this majestic, immortal force. Why did someone from the divine realm come down? Why is this aura so familiar? The owner of this aura doesn't seem to have any ill intentions. Is he looking for something? In each region, no matter their status, they all walked out to feel this omnipresent and majestic force of unknown origin. Great emperors Rongtian also came out of seclusion. Whether they were on the verge of death or had just entered this realm, they were all trying to feel the source of this aura. They also felt that this aura was completely different from the ten-sided world. All the great emperors had the same gaze and the same actions. They also put down everything in tacit understanding and focused on feeling the source of this aura. Is this an immortal? It turns out that the strength above the great emperor level is so domineering. For a moment, they were all excited. There were even some who had comprehended something from it and immediately seized this opportunity. He had checked all of them. Xiantian Shenzhen didn't find anything. He also didn't find the person he was looking for, whether it was some information or clues, or something else. According to Shuelon's talent, the Tao of the Great Oblivion that she cultivates is a supreme great Tao. She should have already entered the divine world. It's not convenient for me to talk about what happened after that. In short, no news is also good news. Although there wasn't much good news, there wasn't any bad news either. Just as the profound Heaven Immortal Exalted had said, he was a proud son of the heavens whose talent was not much inferior to Qin Yu's. If no one could find him after 10,000 years, the biggest possibility was that he had ascended to the God realm. Disciple understands. Qin Yu was well aware of this. Not finding any news in the world of 10 directions was actually the best news. He had already guessed this, but now his guess had been confirmed. But it doesn't matter. If I meet her after I go back, I'll tell her about you. Xiantian Shenzhen had always been aware of the small interactions between the two of them. If the previous incident had not happened, most likely there was already a pair of celestial couples in the God realm. It wouldn't have dragged on until now. Qin Yu, however, refused him straightforwardly. Some things are better said by me personally. Master, you should leave first. Anyway, it wouldn't take long. He was almost done here. So much time had passed. Why would he care about a few more days? He had just entered the heavenly ethereal realm, and he actually felt that he was not far from ascending. Logically speaking, it should be very absurd. However, everyone present had a look of deep agreement. After all, that person was Qin Yu. The advantage he possessed was truly too great. It was just a short time to enter the ninefold God realm. To him, finding an entrance to the ninefold God realm was not a difficult thing. Then Master will wait for you in the ninefold God realm. When the time comes, Master will prepare good wine and delicacies for you. I'll also take out my jar of 100 immortals to welcome you. Qin Yu was a little shocked by the generosity this time, but thinking that they hadn't seen each other for many years, it was normal. 100 immortals was just a name he casually came up with. The ingredients used to brew the wine were hundreds of celestial items from heaven and earth in the God realm. With a special method, the medicinal effects were completely fused together. Not only was the taste delicious, but in one mouthful, it was comparable to countless heavenly treasures or hard work. The most important thing was, it took a lot of effort to brew such a jar of wine. Without absolute strength, it was impossible to gather all the ingredients. Even if you gathered all the ingredients, you might not be able to find someone who knew how to brew it. Therefore, a small sip of 100 Immortals wine was sold for a sky-high price. There were also countless people who had celestial spirit coins, but they couldn't find a place to buy it. Very few people knew that the real creator of this wine was actually Xiantian Shenzhen. Even the ninefold God realm, there were less than 5 people who knew about this. In the blink of an eye, a dazzling white light descended, followed by a flight of stairs. Each flight of stairs seemed to be made of high-quality white jade. It was translucent and warm, but it also contained an extremely majestic power. In reality, these were merely illusions. Only that ray of light was the true guiding light. No matter where it was, it could guide people into the God realm. Now that the person had completely disappeared, Qin Yu felt a little melancholy. However, this melancholy only lasted for a moment. He had always been very clear about what he wanted to do and to what extent. There was only one goal for corruption, and that was to quickly increase his strength. Rongtian is not far away. Only 2 major realms of difference left. Moreover, there were no obstacles ahead for them. It was as if they could rush to the top in a spurt of energy. Although the vast celestial energy from before didn't have any evil intentions, it still caused the entire 10 Directions world to boil. Only a very small number of people guessed that person's identity, and these people were all without exception. They were all great emperors who had participated in the incident back then. However, now that time had passed, some people had already fallen in the passage of time, and some people had already risen to prominence. However, it was impossible for them to enter the God realm. No one could get past the barrier in the depths of their hearts, and no one dared to recall what had happened that day. That extremely powerful strength, and the ease with which he could fight 1 against 10 people, had left a deep impression on them. So much so that all of them knew that after that battle, their futures were all destroyed. Qin Yu brought the dragon soul to a few more familiar places, but it was just a walk around. What he really wanted to do, he had already done it while he was roaming around. Issue a challenge to the world. Chapter 821. There was more than one person who was challenged by him. There were 9 of them in total, 9 great emperors. At the same time, they represented one of the top forces in each of the 9 regions. He used his heavenly ethereal realm cultivation to announce his challenge to everyone in the world. Just like that, everywhere he went. There was another group of people who were interested in talking about it. When Luo Shan first heard about it, he didn't take it seriously. Could it be that the person who issued the challenge thought that he was his benefactor? Although he didn't even tell them his name, he was a true genius who could defeat a heavenly palace realm cultivator with his quintessential sage realm cultivation. He was quite lucky to find his own family not long after. It turned out that his family was just a direct descendant of a big family. Although he wasn't the only heir, he was still a direct descendant. After the family found out what had happened to him and checked his background, they accepted him into the family. Later on, because of his great cultivation talent, he attracted the attention of the Luo family's patriarch and was accepted as a personal disciple. The Luo family was considered a big force. There are no sects or forces in the water domain, only big and small families. As a top force in the water domain, the Luo family's patriarch quickly got Qin Yu's portrait. Luo Shan was about to pour tea. This was one of his daily tasks. However, when he saw the person in the portrait, he accidentally spilled the hot tea on the patriarch. Fortunately, the patriarch didn't get angry. He just felt that something was wrong with him today. Of course, Luo Shan wasn't in a good state. He was still in a daze. Suddenly, he pointed at the person in the portrait. "This is the person who saved me and avenged my family." Of course, he was quite shrewd. He wouldn't expose the fact that he had a dragon vein. Other than the fact that he saved his life, he didn't say anything else. His family's blood relationship was definitely incomparable. He was very clear on which was more important and which was more important. What? The Luo family's patriarch couldn't help but be shocked. He immediately asked what was going on. He had even gathered all the important people in the family together. It was obvious how important it was. As for the other places that Qin Yu had appeared in, more or less, the same thing had also occurred. However, he was worried. At the same time, he was shocked by the speed of his improvement. How long had it been? Half a month? He had actually reached the heavenly ethereal realm. Could it be that the world had changed? Was the heavenly ethereal realm a cabbage that could be easily reached? There were also some people who didn't know much discussing why Qin Yu would do such a thing. He had challenged 9 great emperors by himself. How could they be willing to accept it? How could they believe it? Wasn't this no different from courting death? Only the 9 people involved knew what was going on. What was going on? That person from back then had returned. Only those who had faced that person head-on would know how terrifying he was. No matter how powerful they were now, no one had the guts to truly charge forward. Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul did not care about what the others thought. They merely walked past the crowd one by one before telling everyone. Although this matter was merely an appearance, it was still able to gather the majority of the people in a short period of time. Some of them were so talkative that even those who initially suspected it to be a rumor had no choice but to believe it after hearing it with their own ears. The battlefield was set in the Xian region, and the time was 1 month later. No matter what other people thought, Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul weren't affected at all. They ate, drank, and wandered around. Their hearts were clear and pure. Naturally, they wouldn't take those unnecessary things to heart. They wouldn't pursue strength wholeheartedly. Other than that, there was nothing else. Pure only meant that the heart was free of distracting thoughts. Those who were slightly paranoid naturally belonged to distracting thoughts. Roar! Roar! 2 little azure dragons struggled out and circled Qin Yu nonstop. They even wanted to land on him. But today's little azure dragons were no longer the finger-sized dragons of the past. Although 2 drops of essence blood were taken, but they were quickly nourished by the aura of the dragon vein. At that time, Qin Yu Emperor also offered up all the wealth he had plundered in his life. Qin Yu took a large portion of it to feed the 2 little fellows. In short, not only did the 2 little fellows not suffer any losses, but they also gained great benefits. They actually reached the childhood stage in such a short time. At that time, The two little fellows opened their eyes at the same time. What they saw was Chinyu. They treated him like a father, especially when Chinyu was wearing a soft armor made from the scales of the azure dragons. He also carried the aura of the azure dragons on him, and it would never decay. Naturally, the two little azure dragons became extremely close to Chinyu. To anyone else, including the dragon soul, they did not bother to show any respect. Roar! Roar! The little fellow's cries were very weak. At first glance, one couldn't tell that it was the voice of a young dragon. Good boy. Hearing this familiar word, the little azure dragon rubbed Chinyu's fingertips reluctantly. Then it went back to where it was supposed to go. It was a huge market. There were all kinds of shops on the side, and in the middle of the street, there was an extremely magnificent palace. Chinyu's current face was no longer suitable for him to swagger about everywhere. Every time they passed by a place, people would stop to watch. Some people just felt that he looked familiar, and some people recognized him on the spot. Isn't he the one who sent the letter of challenge? Now that you mention it, he does look like him. I didn't know that he was so bold. Keep your voices down. No matter what he is at least a heavenly void realm expert. And as far as I know, he has killed more than one heavenly palace expert. So, the noisy street suddenly became quiet. Even the shopkeepers in the shops stopped what they were doing. And in a restaurant next to them, all the customers who were eating also stopped what they were doing. An expert in the heavenly palace realm. That was an existence that everyone looked up to, although they were in the most prosperous place. But it was only limited to the Shang domain. The truly powerful ones could kill all of them in seconds. Even if there were many passers-by, the heavenly palace realm was still the absolute strongest. Seeing that young and handsome face, a few teenagers couldn't help but blurt out, "You must be kidding." At such a young age, he had managed to kill more than one heavenly palace realm cultivator, even though he was at a higher cultivation level. Chinyu walked in step by step. Without any disguise, he went directly to the front of the trading house and knocked on the table. Chapter 822. I want to make a deal with the person in charge here. But if you want to make a deal, you can just do it in this hall. Chinyu's eyes were calm. This is a big deal. You can't bear the responsibility. Call the person in charge here. Soon, the person in charge of the Rongtian trading house appeared. He was extremely fast. He looked like a gentle scholar and didn't look like a martial artist. However, he wasn't weak either. He was also in the heavenly ethereal realm. If you don't mind, you can call me Mr. Rong, although most people prefer to call me Old Rong or All-Seeing Eyes. All-Seeing Eyes was a very famous person. It was rumored that his eyes could see through everyone in the world. If there was something that he didn't recognize or know of, he would be able to immediately tell the origin of the item after taking a look at it. Coupled with his smooth way of doing things and his shocking strength, he gradually gained such a reputation. However, this reputation only spread within the Shang district. Chinyu didn't care who was standing in front of him, even if he knew who was standing in front of him. Countless great Emperor Rongtian had been defeated by him. Why would he care about a heavenly ethereal realm cultivator? The two of them entered the sealed room and sat opposite each other. Suddenly, a large pile of rare treasures appeared on the table. They were piled up into a small mountain. In the end, a pot Dharma treasure fell to the ground. Chinyu didn't even bat an eyelid. He just let it fall to the ground. In the end, it was Tong Tian Yin who recognized the origin of this thing at a glance. He hurriedly pulled it back just before it fell to the ground. Such a treasure is very valuable. Do you know the origin of this heaven refining pot? You're simply wasting God's gift. Although the name was a little exaggerated, it could be used to refine all kinds of precious items in the shortest time possible. Moreover, it wouldn't lose anything. Therefore, it was very useful. Especially for some people, they were even willing to take out their entire fortune just to buy this pot. However, he soon became speechless. After taking a few more glances, he realized that there were quite a few treasures on the table. Compared to those things, the heaven refining pot was really nothing. There were simply too many treasures, and none of them were useless. This was the entire collection of the profound Feather Emperor. Anything that could be collected by him was definitely not trash. Even the items with the lowest value often had their own unique effects. Not long after, the all-seeing eye could no longer see through the needles. He was holding one in each hand and another in each hand. Suddenly, he saw a picture. He slowly opened it. Then, he exclaimed in disbelief. It's the sky spill diagram. Tian Yin diagram. He was so excited that his hands were trembling. It took him a long time to regain his composure. Qin Yu, on the other hand, did not reveal the slightest fluctuation from beginning to end. Tan Tian Yin held the extremely precious sky spill diagram in his arms. His voice trembled as he asked incredulously, "Are you sure you want to trade all of these things?" However, under the expectant gaze of the all-seeing eye, Qin Yu slowly shook his head. Just as the leader's eyes dimmed, deciding to take as many as he could, Qin Yu suddenly spoke. "The table here is too small. It can't fit all of them." "Heavens, you actually have more." After realizing the meaning of those words, the all-seeing eye could not care less about his appearance. He did not even continue to maintain his refined appearance. He ran out and came back with a big table. It looked like it was casually pulled out from somewhere. However, the table was still quite flat. Most importantly, it was very big. It was so big that it was enough for one person to lie down on it. "It's still a little small. Forget it. Let's leave it like this for now. I should be able to let it go, albeit barely." To say that he was barely able to let it go was truly an extremely difficult thing to do. The all-seeing, I finally saw what it meant to pile up like a mountain. And it was countless treasures piled up like a mountain. Every single one of them was enough to make people fight over it. But now, he saw a tall mountain of them. No matter how many times he scanned, he did not find a single piece of trash. Not a single thing was useless. All of them were valuable treasures. I'm afraid I can't take all of this alone. Do you want me to immediately? No, I'll tell the owner now. The Rongtian trading house moved faster than expected. Perhaps it was because of the benefits, or perhaps it was because of other reasons, but he soon met the owner of the trading house. "Nantian, I've heard of your name long ago. It's only today that we finally meet. You are indeed extraordinary." He actually had the guts to use the name Rongtian. This trading house was also backed by Great Emperor Rongtian, and he was quite powerful. Nantian was a direct descendant of Great Emperor Rongtian. He was also quite valued. That was why the trading house was handed over to him. When he first heard about the challenge, he only felt that it was unbelievable. But now that he saw the person in front of him and saw those calm eyes, he only felt his heart palpitate. That feeling of danger seemed to be mixed with a sense of familiarity. You can deal with these things as you see fit. Change all of them into cultivation resources. If it's not enough, just throw them away. Throw them away. Throw away everything that's left. And from the start to the end, he did not reveal any fluctuations. Looking at the all-seeing eye, who was at the same level as him, he wanted nothing more than to throw himself into the pile of treasures. Even though they were the same level, he gave off an unfathomable feeling. Nantian finally understood what that sense of familiarity was. Qin Yu's gaze and attitude gave him the same feeling as the Great Emperor. It was also the same feeling of danger. It was also the same feeling of not taking these things to heart. Because with their level, there was no need for them to take these unnecessary things to heart. And now, this huge pile of treasures was obviously superfluous in the eyes of this young man who looked much younger than him. But our trading house has always been fair and just. Also, we can't take out such a huge amount of cultivation resources at the moment. Qin Yu seemed to have expected this, and he was already prepared. Then do me a favor. Let the entire 10 Directions world know about the battle invitation. Also, inform everyone of my location at all times. Every hour, I'll reposition myself. The first one was still understandable, but the second one was incomprehensible to anyone. This was not a rush to die, as many people had guessed. Instead, it was a kind of arrogance that Nantian could not understand. Chapter 823. As a heavenly god, he actually took the initiative to let everyone know his location after provoking so many major powers. He didn't know what to say. Qin had already thought it through. He wanted to ascend to the heavenly god realm as soon as possible. He wanted to break through the remaining realms as soon as possible. It was too troublesome for him to find places to train himself. There were many people who wanted to find him. He was just providing them with an opportunity. Putting aside other difficulties, Nantion's biggest worry was how to accurately pinpoint the location of his target. No one knew how many regions there were in the 10 Directions world. No one could guarantee that they would be able to locate a person accurately among so many regions. Not even the great emperors. It was indeed a relatively troublesome matter. However, it wasn't like there was no solution. You can contact your people at any time, right? You're saying that we should send someone to follow you. That's not a bad idea. Nantion thought that he had understood. However, he still didn't understand. Qin, you just wanted him to have a way to contact the trading house at any time. Naturally, he would know the time. He would let everyone know his location at the right time. He would welcome challenges from the entire world. You're crazy. He didn't have any other thoughts other than that. An early-stage heavenly virtual realm cultivator dared to challenge 9 great emperors, 9 top forces. Moreover, these 9 top forces had existed for a very long time. Every great Emperor Rongtian who was challenged. They were all the most experienced people in the 10 Directions world. Any one of them was enough to make everyone respect them. Even those of the same realm had to look up to them. It doesn't matter if I'm crazy or not. What matters is whether you're willing to do this business. Are these not enough? If not, I have more bargaining chips. How about this? It was a palm-sized heart protection mirror. However, it was of high quality. It was even better than the other items on the table. A palm-sized item like this was enough for everyone under Great Emperor Rongtian to fight for it. Of course, this was only one of the better items in the dragon vein. However, it was definitely not the best, but the quality was not bad. Moreover, to Qin, it was a piece of trash that had no use at all. But even so, in Qin eyes, it was just an ordinary item. Nantion still agreed without hesitation. Those things that were as tall as hills were enough for him to make a fortune, let alone a way to contact him. Even if Qin wanted to leave, he wouldn't even blink an eye at a very important subordinate of his. Now that the deal is done, I will definitely fulfill your request. In any case, he was going to make a huge profit in the future. If those people wanted to get information from him, they would have to pay a hefty price. It was rare to see a business that was profitable on both sides. It was rare for him to meet such a person, so of course he wouldn't let him go so easily. However, he also knew that he had gained a huge advantage. Therefore, it was better to satisfy some other requirements as much as possible. Do you have anything else? Tell me all at once. We can also fulfill all of your small requests. By the way, I thought you might need this information, so I got someone to prepare in advance. A set of information was placed in front of Qin. There was a lot of information. Qin and the Dragon Soul took a few glances at it and already had an idea in their hearts. This information was all about the 9 great emperors and the major forces under them. Moreover, it was already very detailed, including the most important people and the lives of these great emperors. Although some things weren't considered confidential, they weren't things that just anyone could find out. For example, the descendants of these great emperors. Generally speaking, except for some arrogant ones, they hid it very well. However, in this piece of information, there was even information about which person in a position was the illegitimate son of a great emperor. Everything was written clearly and clearly. It was already worth quite a bit. These things are indeed useful. The most important thing is that they are thoughtful. If they weren't, they wouldn't have gathered it so neatly. Moreover, this information was actually very valuable. In a way, it was even slightly more valuable than the pile of things that Qin had given. However, they couldn't say that. After all, information could be sold repeatedly. As long as no one leaked it on a large scale, they could show this information to many people at the same time. Therefore, this information revealed more of a favor. They wanted to give Qin this favor. As for Qin, he also accepted this piece of information. After all, it was indeed useful to him. But owing a favor? That was impossible. After Qin Yu left, a small dagger was left on the seat. It looked dim. However, this was the characteristic of a treasure that concealed itself. It didn't look very eye-catching, and it was a little dusty, as if it had just been picked up from the ground. However, as long as it was pulled out, the sealed dagger would break out of the seal. He didn't even need to use any strength at all. With a casual wave, a blade light would appear. There was even a wisp of black mist lingering around the silver saber light. This was the dagger that Xiantian Shenzhen had used once. Not only was there a trace of demonic qi on it, but there were also traces of immortal blood. In the end, Xiantian Shenzhen refined it again and integrated the demonic qi and the immortal blood into it. Its nature had become very different. After Nantian obtained this dagger, he couldn't find anyone to return it to. In the end, he could only make a deal with the great emperor above him. As soon as he pulled out the dagger, the great emperor felt an aura from it. An immortal aura. Where did you get this dagger? There are traces of immortals on it, and the aura is extremely domineering. There's also a trace of tamed demonic qi. Its lethality is doubled. Nantian didn't dare to hide anything. He explained the cause and effect clearly word by word. After hearing this, the great emperor had an epiphany. There had never been such a coincidence in this world. The fierce and domineering aura that swept through the entire world and the immortal aura on the dagger came from the same source. You just need to do as he says. Remember, you must be careful with your words and actions. You must be perfect, and you can't do anything unnecessary. Nantian was rather shocked, but he didn't dare to ask more. Not long after, the Rongtian trading house brazenly posted a message. Qin Yu's dragon soul had now reached the edge of the Shang district's central area. Chapter 824. Whether they were from the Shang domain or not, whether they were going to intercept him or not, they quickly rushed to the location after receiving the news. Indeed, many people saw Qin Yu's true appearance. Before this, most people had only heard of him. Although there were some portraits of him later on, none of them were as shocking as seeing him with their own eyes. It was more because of Qin Yu's magnanimity and his realm. Just when many people had just set off and hadn't even arrived at the location, Rongtian Trading House refreshed the location again. And this time, it was also very accurate. The most important thing was that the time interval was exactly the same. It was almost exactly the same as the time they had agreed on. There was no difference at all. Qin Yu was found almost immediately. However, there were very few onlookers among the people who came this time. Looking for me? There are two kinds of people who come looking for me. Passers-by and enemies. Are you passers-by or enemies? The people who came looked at each other. Originally, they decided not to make a move and wait and see. At this time, they were not far from the Shang domain. They might even be from the Shang domain. There were no big sections. Most of them wanted to curry favor with great Emperor Rongtian. They didn't deliberately chase after him. We're here to look for you. That's right. You dare to challenge the great Emperor with the strength of a heavenly, ethereal realm. Why don't you give up before things get out of hand? Why don't you come with us to apologize? It's not too late to regret now. Qin Yu, however, only looked at them calmly. Since they were not passers-by, they were enemies. If they were enemies, he would kill without mercy. There were heavenly ethereal realm experts and heavenly palace experts. But without exception, they all died. They didn't even have the ability to resist. Qin Yu was like a god of war who had descended to slaughter. None of the people under his hands could struggle or even resist. Even after killing so many experts, Qin Yu was still untainted by even a speck of dust. However, there were corpses all over the ground. All the onlookers couldn't help but be shocked and silent. Such strength was far from what they could provoke. They could only be glad that they didn't rush up and become one of the corpses on the ground. Similarly, many people were paying attention to what happened here. Many people would go to the Rongtian trading house to confirm if they had only heard about it. It seemed that everyone had tacitly agreed that if they wanted to obtain information about Qin they would have to go to the Rongtian auction house. Only by obtaining confirmation from the other side could they be considered to have taken the right path. In other words, everyone had to admit it and believe it. After that, he continued to report at a fixed time. Qin and the Dragon Soul had always been together, even if there were times when they were separated. It was also to separate the positions of the two people. Of course, Qin and the Dragon Soul took the initiative to contact each other. The Rongtian auction house made a lot of money from this. Countless people wanted to get the most accurate information. More or less, they had to give them some benefits. Therefore, even if some of the original plans were changed, the location was made public to everyone without any concealment. They still made a lot of money in fees. Moreover, there would be no cost to this fee. Ever since he had shown his strength, he had been in a daze. Qin and the Dragon Soul left peacefully. After walking through several regions, they didn't encounter anything similar to the previous incident. No one took the initiative to stop them. However, there were many schemes hidden in the dark. There's fallen immortal powder in the water. The roasted meat that had already been cooked was suddenly switched. There's a trap ahead. There's an ambush in the canyon. There were simply too many such incidents to count. However, none of those people appeared openly. His concealment was not bad. It would be too troublesome to catch all of them. Moreover, there were so many people that they couldn't catch all of them. Master, these people are too annoying. Why don't we not do the location? Anyway, if some people want to find us, it's not like they can't find us. Now, we've attracted a group of annoying flies. Although they weren't harmful to them, it was too annoying to keep them by their side. Many things had happened along the way. However, there was no effective way to solve them all in one go. It was even a waste of energy to take them seriously. Don't worry about them. The real big fish should take the bait. Qin did not really do anything on his way here. He did not do anything at all. He went to many places. He also met many people. All the clues that he had buried before. It was time to explode at this time. 1,000 Soul Lock. 10,000 Bow and Banner. Earth Evil Dark Dragon Spell. There was more than one person lying in ambush, and all of them seized this opportunity to attack together. Qin current position happened to be a very easy place to set up an ambush. There was nowhere for him to escape to. There were even a few figures appearing in the sky above his head. Everyone looked at him as if he was a treasure. Catch him. Don't let him run away. Lu Song, you and I catch him together. When the time comes, we'll split the benefits equally. I remember that you still owe me a favor. Join forces with me now. Hurry up. Almost everyone quickly took action, roping in all the people who could be roped in. Without exception, everyone rushed up at the same time, wanting to catch Qin. Although the matter in the trading house was very secretive, the people involved were not the kind of people who would casually reveal information. But there was no such thing as an airtight wall in this world. Many people had seen Qin and the Dragon Soul enter the auction house. After that, the auction house will be able to get the location of the two at any time. There was even a lot of good things of unknown origin. Those who were observant immediately guessed what was going on. In the end, the message spread, saying that the two of them had supreme treasures on them. Some even said that they had a complete dragon vein in their hands, as well as countless treasures. Although some people felt that this matter might not be reliable, many people believed it. Dragon Soul. After the Dragon Soul heard the order, it attacked at the same time. The two of them had long cooperated with each other, advancing and retreating with a sense of propriety. This group of people was not difficult to deal with. They could not even hurt a single hair on Qin head. It was impossible for the great emperor to run out and chase after them. Those who rushed out at this time were just some nameless people. The highest was only the heavenly palace, and they were not even as strong as the sea god palace's ancestor. Chaos Dragon Spear. Qin figure quickly flashed through the crowd. Everywhere he passed, everyone wailed and fell to the ground. Blood spurted out from their vital points. I'll fight it out with you. Chapter 825. There was a flash of blood-red light. Thump! Somewhere further away from Qin Yu's dragon soul, several people suddenly fell to the ground. Their cause of death was a large hole in their chest. Sacrifice to the heavens. Ancient evil god, please let me borrow your power. Wipe out all enemies and remove all obstacles from me. I am willing to sacrifice my flesh and blood, forever offering my everything. Suddenly, the world shook. A pitch-black gate slowly appeared. There was a rumble. It landed on the ground, stirring up a thick cloud of dust. A deep and mysterious power gradually spread from the depths of the gate. Several strands of black threads quickly ate up all the corpses on the ground at a speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. Even the living were attacked. Only Qin Yu's dragon soul was safe for the time being, but only for the time being. The unknown black threads floating in the air were still looking for all kinds of nutrients. They coveted Qin Yu's dragon soul very much and kept circling around him. And the people who caused all this couldn't escape bad luck. They were the first to be attacked. Caught off guard, they almost died with hatred. There were fewer and fewer living people. The remaining few people formed a small group and kept trying to stop the threads from spreading. But it's useless. These black threads should be from the ninefold god realm. But whether or not they're from a ninefold god realm, none of your methods can stop the black threads from spreading. As soon as he finished speaking, the black lines could indeed ignore all attacks. Whether it was swords, spears, swords, halberds, or various martial arts techniques, they could penetrate all of them and quickly achieve their goal. They penetrated another person's body again. Dozens of unknown black threads quickly surrounded him and sucked him dry in just a few breaths. Another person died in an instant. The remaining people could only dodge. Qin Yu and the dragon soul, who were completely unattacked, became the target of everyone. How do you know that everything we're doing is useless? That's right. You're safe and sound, but we're all going to die. Why do you have to say that? If we can't survive, don't think you can live well either. Even if we die, we'll take one of you down with us. The remaining people had completely gone crazy. They died one after another. Even the withered corpses on the ground left a deep impression on them. No one could remain indifferent in the face of all this. In the end, they did not commit suicide in despair. Instead, they targeted innocent people who weren't affected. Qin Yu had expected all of this, so he didn't feel uncomfortable. These people were here to kill him. Whether or not the unknown black threads appeared, none of them would survive. Not a single one of them would survive. Because as long as he was here, he would not allow anyone to leave under his watch. You're going to die sooner or later, so why bother struggling? He should have thought of his own fate when they came to attack him, instead of wallowing in despair here. He was just hoping for a fluke and lost the bet in the end. He had always relied on his own strength to speak for himself. Since you're being attacked, I will not take the initiative to attack you. If I can take the initiative to run away, that will be fine. I can choose not to chase after you, but if you don't know what's good for you, then leave it to fate. The dragon soul was also ready to attack. However, he suddenly noticed that Qin Yu's movements were not very fast. He left a large part of his strength behind. After thinking about it for a moment, he understood why. It was because those unknown black threads were simply too strange. It was too strange. The timing of their appearance was captured. Just a powerful force was enough for them to be vigilant. Moreover, the person who summoned the black threads had said it clearly. He wanted to attack the enemy once. The person who was competing with that person for the treasure was the enemy. But how could the two of them not be the target of these black threads? Therefore, something must have gone wrong somewhere. These black machines were also targets that they needed to be vigilant of. Those people had already begun to make their move because the black threads were growing bigger and bigger. Now, they had occupied most of the place and were even about to surround them. And there was only one place without any black threads, which seemed to be extremely safe. That was where Qin Yu and the dragon soul were. Wherever they passed, the black threads would avoid them. The thick and heavy door kept emitting an ominous aura. As these people became more agitated, it seemed that the door opened a little, but no one noticed this. At present, Their attention was on the people around them, as well as the black threads. Heavenly thunder. Heaven and earth 10,000 changes. Heaven and earth thunder law. Rootless floating water. Almost all of them used their trump cards. At a moment of life and death, snatching a safe place would definitely make all of them do their best. In comparison, Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul had to bear even more pressure. These people were no longer afraid of death, because retreating was also death. They would use their most powerful strength. They kept squeezing out their potential just to fight for that moment of rest. Such a large area. Attacks from all directions were quite difficult to deal with. Qin Yu put away the Chaos Dragon Spear and took out another weapon. Dragon God Ancient Seal. Heaven Swallowing Dragon Seal. A huge shadow pressed down. The people at the front were instantly crushed into meat paste. At this moment, the number of people left was less than a palm. Fresh flesh and blood. Countless black threads spread out in an instant. They wrapped around the fresh flesh and blood and retreated a moment later. Only yellow sand was left on the ground. Wherever the black threads passed, even weeds could not survive. It was so terrifying that the remaining few people did not even have the thought of resisting. There was only one thought left in their minds, and that was to escape. Only Qin Yu noticed that the threads had shrunk to a certain extent after they were retracted, and this was something that had never happened before. This door. Qin Yu looked at the door carefully again and suddenly felt that it was a little different. It seemed that this door had some unknown changes, and these changes would bring a lot of danger. But looking carefully, it seemed that there was no change from before, whether it was the pattern or the aura on it. It was exactly the same as before. Watch this door. Inform me immediately if there are any changes. Qin Yu could only instruct the Dragon Soul to watch this door first, but he still had to see the origin of those black threads. Although these black threads must have come out from this door, but it was not without something to restrain them. He released one move after another and tried again. There was a new discovery. Chapter 826. These guys were all afraid of the dragon aura. Or to be more precise, they were afraid of all the righteous aura between heaven and earth. And this point was quickly confirmed. No wonder none of the black threads approached them. It was not because they did not want to, but because they could not. It was so simple. Master, that door moved slightly, as if it's about to open. No one knew what was behind that door. Perhaps even the person who could summon this door did not know. Otherwise, he wouldn't have died amidst his unwilling wails. Just as he turned around, he saw with his own eyes that the door gently and weakly moved back a little. Accompanying the movement of the door was the painful wails of the remaining people. I don't want to die. Treasure. Some people could not think of anything before they died, while others could only beg bitterly before they died. Their minds were in a mess, and some people were still thinking about what they had been pursuing. The last few people also died, and the door was pushed back a little more. Suddenly, a black fog surged. It was like a gust of wind, but the strangest thing was that it was not accompanied by any sound. The leaves did not shake, but the area covered by all the black threads. Thick black fog had appeared, and it kept rolling out. Wherever it passed, it was like the effect of the black threads. Not a single blade of grass grew. 8 trigrams transforming into dragon. The powerful aura collided with the black fog. Soon, a part of the black fog disappeared, but did not completely disappear. If it were the black threads from before. Under this move, not even the last bit would be left. But this black fog was more powerful. Even if the container could still crush it, it could still preserve a part of its strength. Qin Yu chuckled. Since using 30% of his strength could not achieve a satisfactory effect, then he would use more strength. What was so difficult about that? A dragon figure gradually condensed. Soon, its eyes flashed, and it roared and rushed toward the black fog. Countless rays of light bloomed. All the black fog was swept away. Even the wisps of black fog no longer existed under the illumination of this light. Creak, creak. It was as if someone was pushing a wooden door that had long been damaged. the door that changed along with the sound. It was already slowly opening and opening again. However, there was no way to open up more cracks. Another large amount of dense black fog flew out. It swept across the entire land, until everything on this piece of land had turned into yellow sand. The only ones left were Chinyu and the dragon soul. However, these things did not interest Chinyu. After clearing out one batch, another batch would soon appear. If this continued, there would be no end to it. Chinyu only walked to the door, and there was no black fog wherever he went. The dragon soul was not affected by the black fog at all. Although he loathed the thick black fog, he did not act rashly. As long as this door was left open, the endless black fog could not be removed. The recondensed 8 trigrams dragon shadow crashed into it. He could only shake it slightly. It was impossible to completely remove the door. Chinyu had even noticed that after this move, Chinyu's expression changed drastically. Cracks began to appear on the door, but he was not so naive as to think that as long as he broke the door would disappear. Righteous aura. Suddenly, he waved his hand. The shadow of a huge dragon vein appeared. There seemed to be countless dragons circling around it. An extremely vast and majestic bulge surged out. The entire land was enveloped by dragon aura. Such a powerful and majestic aura. It easily suppressed all the black fog. Even the door became transparent and blurry. A blurry face appeared on the pitch-black and heavy door. A large mouth that looked like it had been smeared with blood, appearing dark red. Its mouth full of fangs looked incomparably ferocious and faintly green. Other than fierceness and bloodthirst, there was no other emotion in its eyes. "You are courting death." Just as he finished speaking, the figure of the dragon vein became clearer. The dragon aura became denser, and greed flashed through those ferocious eyes. In the end, it was completely covered by bloodthirst. "You will regret everything you've done today. This is the god of darkness' judgment on you." Chinyu did not say any nonsense to him. He only used strength to prove that now was not the time for the other party to negotiate with him. At present, all the initiative was in his hands. "You're not qualified to say such things to me now. Go and find your god of darkness." The blurry face on the door seemed to be even more resentful. "I am the most devout believer of the god of darkness, and I have his bloodline. Those who go against the darkness will be punished in the end. Darkness will always be your companion, and blood will be your only burial." This was the last sentence left by the face on the door. After that, he had completely disappeared, along with the heavy black door. The dragon soul was very disdainful. He clearly did not have the strength to resist at all, yet he still had the guts to be arrogant there. No matter what kind of existence the god of darkness was, he couldn't even tell the difference between the enemy and himself. He was really brainless. He can't be underestimated, although everything I have done is already a heavy blow to him. But after all, that is something from a ninefold god realm. Maybe there really is a god. Chinyu's eyes flashed with a touch of scorching heat. That was the ninefold god realm. Although he did not know if this title was true, but to have such a title, it was more or less a matter of strength, and he would soon step into that world and pursue a higher martial arts realm. Everything in the world, so far, could not meet his requirements. Even if he committed all kinds of crimes and plundered everywhere, it would still take a long time to achieve his goal, and he was already implementing the fastest way. Soon, he would be able to draw a full stop. After the two of them left, there were only countless dried corpses on the ground and rich dragon energy. As soon as those dried corpses came into contact with the wind, they instantly turned into dust and drifted in the air. A butterfly slowly flew over and landed on one of the dried corpses. However, the spot where it landed turned into dust in the next moment. The butterfly with pure white wings flew up again, and after the dust in the air completely dissipated, a few more people appeared on this land. They felt the extremely rich dragon energy in the air. Suen was sure that the previous rumor about the dragon vein must be true. Other than the dragon vein, what else could have such a majestic dragon energy? And it did not dissipate for a long time, lasting for a few days. Chapter 8:27. There were more and more people openly trying to stop him. As he walked, he was suddenly attacked. Hand over the dragon's vein. Heaven trapping net. As long as you hand over the dragon's vein, I'll let you go. Qin Yu forcibly broke through the shackles with his strength and showed him what true strength was. Even if he wanted to take something from him, he should at least ask about what he had done. No matter where he was, he never bothered to hide his identity and traces. There were many people like him who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth and came to rob him. He had only heard of his cultivation level. They did not ask much. Anyone who casually asked around would know how many Heavenly Palace realm experts had died at his hands. However, he did not encounter anyone with higher strength who came to provoke him along the way. When one reached a higher peak realm, they would know how to cherish their lives. Even if the gap between realms was very obvious, Qin Yu used blood to prove his strength along the way. No matter what, he had the strength to challenge a great emperor. Even in the eyes of many people, it was still unbelievable. However, even Heavenly Palace realm experts could not withstand more than a few moves from him. They did not even know what his trump card was. One person after another went to intercept him. Batch after batch of people disappeared without a trace. Great Emperor Rongtian did not seem to be a realm that could not be challenged. Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul also received the title of Invincible below Heaven Rongtian. All of this was something that no one had expected at the beginning. The few people who were challenged were even more frightened. They sent out countless people. They were mixed in with the passers-by who wanted to rob them and had other intentions. They either inquired about information, provoked them in public, or set up an ambush in an inconspicuous place. However, it had never worked. Even now, they only had one more piece of information than they had at the beginning. However, this piece of information was also completely useless. Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul received the title of Invincible below Heaven Rongtian. It was a huge problem for them. 10,000 years later, the few of them had passed. They gathered together again. This time, they were still discussing how to deal with the same person. 10,000 years ago, we were able to join hands and kill him. I can do the same now. I agree. Let's join hands and kill him, even if we don't care about our reputation. A total of 9 great emperors. A total of 9 late-stage great emperors. Could it be that we can't even deal with a heavenly ethereal stage cultivator? He's only at the early stage of the heavenly ethereal stage now. There's a huge gap between his strength and before. One after another, they spoke as if they were already certain of their victory. However, no one held any hope in their hearts. Even if his strength far exceeded his, so what? All of them would have to pay a price more or less, even with their lives. At that time, it was not certain who would be the one to die. Everyone felt that it could be them. He was thinking of ways to greatly reduce the chances of him dying. Let the others die, while he still enjoyed the respect of everyone in the Ten Directions world in a carefree manner. Everyone was thinking the same thing, and no one was an exception. The longer they lived, the more they cherished their lives. No one valued their lives more than these people. It had even reached the point of madness. Other than themselves, they could sacrifice anyone, even their confidants and brothers. Even their own children could be sacrificed without hesitation. I have a pill here that can temporarily give people the strength of great Emperor Rongtian. I'll take out these playful ones, and you guys send out some fearless Heavenly Palace realm cultivators. Let them go and test Qin Yu's strength a step further. This was already the best method, and a pill like this was worth a lot. That person took out quite a few pills, so the others didn't say anything else. They discussed and took out their confidants. No matter how bad they were, after operating for such a long time, they had many Heavenly Palace realm cultivators and their most loyal confidants. Not to mention Heavenly Palace realm cultivators, even Great Emperor Rongtian realm cultivators. There were also a few of them who were their students. If it was a matter of life and death, these people would definitely take action. Although they would not risk their lives for them, they would be able to perform extremely well at critical times. Qin Yu finally faced another test. A few false emperors. These people's strength was far from great Emperor Rongtian. However, there was a huge gap between them and the Heavenly Palace realm. They could only use such a nondescript name. Their position was also quite awkward. They could not be accepted by any side. They actually sent people of your level. It's not that hard to guess, but I thought they might disguise themselves and test him personally. If that was the case, at least they could practice and familiarize themselves with it. However, it was expected that these people would be sent out, even if they had accumulated tens of thousands of years of foundation. They could not casually send out Great Emperor Rongtian, even if he was only at the initial stage and had just advanced. However, he was still a highly respected Great Emperor. No matter where he went, he could control a martial region. In fact, most of the Great Emperors controlled more than one area. Instead, they controlled several relatively large and rich regions, which could even be called empires. How could an uncrowned king personally step into a dangerous situation? After all these years, you've become even more cowardly. You don't even have the guts to do this. You really made me think highly of you. Forget it. Even if it's just the few of you, if you join forces, it should be enough for me to practice. All of you come at me together. Let me see if you can hurt me. He was simply too arrogant. Even if they were already mentally prepared, they still could not tolerate it. However, they did not know that it was completely out of Qin Yu's confidence in his own strength. It was not an exaggeration at all. Then take this. Let me see if you have the strength to provoke us. Sky Burning Fire, Sky Dragon Tornado. Two of them attacked at the same time. One was a sea of fire, the other was a huge tornado. It seemed like there was nowhere to hide. However, it didn't take long for a powerful light to erupt from both the sea of fire and the tornado. The huge air wave overturned everyone. A spacious area was formed around Qin Yu. All the trees and rocks were swept away in an instant, turning into fine powder. Cough, cough, cough. What's going on? You're the one who attacked, and you're asking us what's going on? I'm the one who wants to ask you. The few of them carried the flying dust and were momentarily blinded. They could only use their strength to quickly suppress the dust. Only then did they see that the two of them had attacked at the same time, but it was useless. Chapter 828. The two fake Great Emperors didn't hurt Qin Yu at all. Qin Yu was still standing in the same spot, but the dust in the sky didn't land on him at all. He was now completely immune to these injuries. You guys have already made a move. It's my turn to make a move, right? A bad feeling rose from the bottom of his heart. The few of them instantly sped up and retreated. However, it was too late. Even if they retreated, they couldn't escape the range of the attack. Qin Yu didn't kill all of them. He just wanted to use them as practice and try out something that he had never had the chance to use since it came to him. Profound Feather Heavenly Formation. This formation itself was quite powerful, but unfortunately, he had never had the chance to use it since it came to him. These people weren't even great emperors yet. However, they were still much stronger than ordinary Heavenly Palace realm cultivators. It was best to use them as practice. Let's try 10% of my strength first. Vast and boundless soul power slowly flowed out. A huge formation rose out of thin air, almost covering the sky and the sun. They just took a few steps back and couldn't escape at all. Don't panic. Since it's a formation, it can be broken. To be able to say such words, it seems that you have a way to break the formation. I've long heard that Jinren Zhouqian is good at breaking formations. It seems that the rumors are true. Seeing this huge formation, the few of them didn't panic. They all had a good attitude towards an old man with a white beard. This person was famous for his formation-breaking techniques. Now that they saw this huge formation, although they were shocked by the aura, they didn't panic at all. One had to know that the most important thing to break a formation was to find the key. As long as they could find the core of the formation and destroy it, no matter how strong they were, they would be safe and sound. Breaking the formation with strength was the most inferior method. Since he was good at breaking formations, he wouldn't use brute force. This formation seems to be quite powerful. I hope that everyone can lend me a hand and help me break the formation. Of course, if you need any help, feel free to ask. I have something here. See if it can be useful. It's the same here. The few of them talked one after another, just discussing how to break this formation. However, they didn't care too much about Qin Yu and Dragon Soul, who were standing not far away. The root of the problem was still the problem of cultivation level. Once he swallowed the pill, he would be able to break through his original realm. These people were more or less prideful. Moreover, the difference between their realms was still huge. Every tiny difference seemed so insurmountable. Qin Yu had killed many heavenly palaces along the way, but after all, they did not witness the scene at that time. This was why he had taken this matter to heart. At this moment, this great formation was clearly more of a threat to them. An almost undetectable sigh was heard. What followed was a soft whisper that was almost inaudible. Looks like 10% of my strength isn't enough. Let's make it 30%. The formation was still operating, but the aura it exuded was even stronger. A dark ray of light suddenly joined the wisps of gray soul power. His weak soul power grew once again, and suddenly it swelled to 2 or 3 times its original size. Only after obtaining the authority to control this great formation array did Qin Yu know exactly how powerful this great formation array was. Although it didn't pose much of a threat to him before, it was only because he had the power to restrain it back then. If he couldn't find a way to restrain it, the power of this formation was enough to be invincible among great emperors. The expanded and strengthened soul power already revealed some danger at this moment. But Taoist Jiutian was still thinking about where the weakness of this formation was. They hadn't encountered any fatal danger, so they naturally didn't think that this formation could really suddenly unleash its power and kill them all in an instant. Facing this sudden change, no one cared at all. It was also because of this moment of carelessness that they were suddenly attacked. The misty soul power condensed into arrows, and thousands of phantoms faintly appeared in the sky. Suddenly, they condensed in an instant and fell like raindrops with the speed of lightning. However, after this arrow rain fell, what splashed was not water, but blood. Look at what that is. Everyone be vigilant. This formation is strange. Everyone dodge the arrows. If you can't dodge it, you're finished. What the hell is this thing? Why can't I shake it off? The arrows were condensed from soul power, and they carried a special power. Once they pierced into the body, they couldn't get rid of them no matter what. If they reached out to grab, they could only grab air and nothing else. After such a rain of arrows fell, they were all in a sorry state, but 30% of the power was still not enough to threaten their lives. Master, why don't you try using half of the power? The two of them didn't lower their voices. Previously, they didn't pay too much attention to it, but now that they were stimulated by this sudden trouble, it reminded them of the two people standing beside them. The Dragon Soul's words could be said to be impolite, especially the information revealed by the painting. They couldn't help but be shocked. Half of the power forced them into such a sorry state, and they didn't even use half of the power? If this formation's power was fully activated, wouldn't they all be splattered with blood on the spot? For a moment, about 2/3 of the people wanted to retreat, but the remaining people were all loyal, and the people who could be sent out this time were all absolutely trustworthy confidants. Although they wanted to retreat, they still didn't leave in the end. Our goal this time isn't to kill them, but to test all their trump cards. Moreover, they are too arrogant. This gives us a chance to break the formation further. Everyone felt that this was right, and it was quite reasonable. Although there was a knife hanging above his head, it didn't seem like it was going to fall down at the moment. This caused them to have some wishful thinking. Who knows, they might be able to destroy the saber before it could fall down. Qin Yu stretched out a finger and changed a certain detail on the formation. A faint light flashed, and the entire formation began to spin faster again. A faint light flowed out as it spun, and a part of the soul power condensed from millions of souls was divided. Countless ear-piercing sounds were heard. Before they could react, Li Qianlon's eyes lit up. Countless beautiful, pure, white feathers fell faintly. But the moment before they landed, they turned into the sharpest weapon in the world. They easily cut through the special battle clothes on their bodies. They could only dodge and panic. But these seemingly ordinary feathers turned into blades, so they couldn't catch a trace. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.